So I say most people believe there is something dramatically wrong in this country. They're not sure what it is.
Got your labor next your soul, interest slave in endless hole. It's so deep you'll never leave, a text on key with no reprieve. Interest banking, future sold, paper money, fuck the gold. Print more money, there's no end, new interest rates thanks to the Fed. Inflation's up, we can't afford to import, source an endless hoard. Funding all this endless war, these the whores I must ignore. Feeling good, yeah that's my price. The system lets me have my vice. Bread and circus feels nice, feeling bad, take this advice. Just take this pill, watch TV, smoke weed and chill. Sports ball parties, man the grill. Watch some porn, drain your vril. Endless pleasure, wait until the lights go out, the lights are out. Holy fuck, the lights went out. The lights go out, the lights are out. Holy fuck, the lights went out. Never thought that this would happen. Should've prepped instead of fapping. Tires screeching, people scream. Living nightmare, not a dream. There goes all my dopamine, wiping off my jerk off cream. I'm flabby, weak and unprepared to own a gun. I'm really scared. Water filters, batteries, cans of food and MREs. I really should've bought that shit before the social fabric ripped. Atomized, I'm all alone. No internet, can't scroll my phone. The lights go out, the lights are out. The lights go out. Came on, I can't believe, breathe a sigh of great relief. Boy, I love modernity, endless goon sesh never leave. If you're sad, just take this pill. Watch TV, smoke weed and chill. Sports ball parties, man the grill. Watch some porn, join your grill. Endless pleasure, wait until the lights go out, the lights are out. The lights go out. The lights go out. The lights go out. The lights go out. The lights are out. Holy fuck, the lights went out. The lights go out. The lights are out. Holy fuck, the lights went out. The lights go out.
And we are live once again with the Library of Mass Destruction. I am your head librarian, Capitalisimo, and with me, as always, is my shelving intern, Christopher Sandbatch. How are you doing today, sir?
I'm in an especially fucking bad mood. If you want to, can you hear me? Can everyone hear me?
I can hear you. Yes, we had some microphone problems, and now
no, it's not microphone problems. It's the same shit. Okay, so all right, gang. Actually,
gang.
There are enough fucking nerds in the chat that can probably tell me what the hell is happening. But my router has this issue where, first of all, if I turn it on, it gets hot. We can skip that part. But whenever I turn it on, I can use certain websites, but I can't use social media websites. And I'm sure there's something. I'm sure I've fried my IP setting by
DDoS or something.
No, I've done something with the DNS servers or some gay ass shit. Like it's like revolving. But I mean, that's not really better though. It's not really true though, because like, I mean, the problem's intensifying. And like last week, I had to go put my router in the refrigerator to cool it down, and it worked long enough to get through the show. Now it's like just things are going wrong. I'm not in a good mood. I'm sitting in the corner of my apartment. I mean, not my apartment, my house. I'm sitting in the corner of my house with my phone plugged into the like charger, like trying to get good enough reception to listen to us talk about JFK.
Sandbatch squatting in the corner, talking into his handset.
Groiper?
Groiper. That's right. Well, hopefully we get that resolved, in something, so you don't have to run your router through through a chest freezer. Because
I'm afraid I'm going to have to go. What's really afraid is happening is that because I'm not using the power supply that came in the box. I'm afraid that like my power supply is like surging around usable and like bits and pieces of it. Like, you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I see what you're saying. I think you probably just need to get a new router that has the correct power supply. That would be my solution. And
y'all better need some fucking super chats.
Randall Shirker, before we were even live, sent us $5 and said, "I'm feeling as if the past 2 weeks have been an endless rainstorm of coal from various figures on the right. Have some lucre regardless." Well, hopefully that wasn't us until we opened the show with tech support, which is the strongest cold open we've ever had.
Did you check your TCP/IP settings?
Did you check? Turn it on and turn it off again, please. I can solve it, but only if you have to get the Google Play gift card, and you have to you copy paste the code.
People on the West Coast are still possibly at work, and they're like hearing us do this in one ear and a real Indian IT tech support.
Right. It's actually
in the other ear.
Oh, thank you, Randall. Oh, hell no, we're not the coal he's thinking of. This is the true anthracite. You know what we both do though?
You know how we avoid coal posting?
We don't post.
I post a shitload. In fact, I post so much that I don't have time to see what other people are posting. So it has the same effect.
Oh, so because you're not taking in anyone else's signal.
I consume no signal. I just post. Like it's like literally all I do is just post. Have a thought, post it.
Yep. If you are thinking, then you must be. Then it's not working, right? You have to just put it out. So let's see. Hopefully people do listen to the VODs. Actually, we're doing quite well on Spotify recently. So thanks to all the Spotify listeners. I hope that someday you manage to catch the show live. But thank you.
Yeah. Spotify folks, you all got to get in here and sneak some super chats.
That's right. So let's see. Last time we left off on page 88, Hulk Hogan, and we were just getting to what exactly is a conspiracy, and in true academic in the true fashion of an academic who like really wants to pad the runtime, he is going directly to the U.S. Penal Code. This is like Webster's.
No, nobody does that.
This is like Webster's defines conspiracy as the following. Yeah.
Okay, Webster's is like, in history, professional historian, which I'm not professional, but I'm trained in the guild, so to speak. Webster's is like girl who sits in the front of class with her with several highlighters on the desk at any moment in time. That's that kind of opening. But going directly to the U.S. Penal Code, you're probably huffing paint in the back with me and Wendy.
That's right.
Nobody ever does that. This is the thing, because we were only paying attention on the first day of class when it says to use primary sources where possible, and we just assumed everybody was using primary sources, and so we just didn't pay attention to the rest of where it's like, actually you can just bullshit this with Marxist theory and Webster's dictionary.
Yeah, all you need to do, just like the last episode where he had two fucking pages of Hegel, just to get to the point the point of the U.S. government having multiple competing factions rather than a single overarching teleology.
Well, this is actually the things that the internet, the Twitter sphere versus the actual academic sphere is really interesting, because the actual academic sphere is not Hegelian at all. like not even a little bit, not one single bit. And so you do, like, it's not as bad as it used to, but you used to have to, anytime you were going to talk about Hegel, you pretty much had to preface it. And historians actually, and you can tell how unfamiliar the history profession is with Hegel, because they use Hegel not even close to the right way. It's like they use
strange situations for
Hegel. What they do is they use Hegel the way you can use Marx this way, because Marx is, his whole thing is dialectical history. But Hegel doesn't work that way. Like, Hegelian synthesis is like a way more abstract thing than most historians, most people in grad school in history can even fathom. And then you take the relatively parochial nature of American academia, and it creates some really retarded Hegel. Not like retarded hot Hegel, like e-girls with toe rings, but like retarded boring Hegel,
You like using Hegel to pad runtime. Anyway, okay, we're gonna get to the book. So we left off right when we were at the definition of criminal conspiracy. The definition of conspiracy: a person is guilty of conspiracy with another person or persons to commit a crime if the purpose of promoting or facilitating its commission, he agrees with such other person or persons that they or one or more of them will engage in conduct that constitutes such crime, or an attempt or solicitation to commit such crime, or agrees to aid such person or persons in the planning or commission of such crime, or of an attempt or solicitation to commit such crime. You're in conspiracy if you just are like, hey, do something. It technically is conspiracy.
But it's true. I was talking about this actually though with my buddy, my Russian friend Bobby.
Yeah.
The Russian translator, Bobby. Were you in on that conversation? Were you in there?
I was
okay.
not.
We were talking about how, like, anything, and he's actually, Wilson is actually he's used the phrase Casa Nostra as well. Yep. And the real, like, again, here's real historian versus like idiot American history. The Casa Nostra is a thing that actually only really briefly existed. And it was like this one time in like the 1930s or some shit, whenever one Sicilian mob boss had like forcibly united all of the family and all of the families. And then he got shot or something, or he died, and it immediately fell apart. So this is like, it's the same impulse that makes people do this. It's like everything, people getting together to do things is a mafia. People getting together to do things is literally
a cult.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Scope of conspiratorial relationship. If a person guilty of conspiracy as defined by subsection 1 of this section knows that a person with whom he conspires to commit a crime has conspired with another person or persons to commit the same crime, he is guilty of conspiring with such other person or persons, whether or not he knows their identity to commit such crime. So this is how you take down cells, right? They don't need to know who the other person is if they are provably involved.
This is also fascinatingly pretty much the definition of how an actual psyop works.
What do you mean?
I was listening to a guy that used to work in psyop a couple of weeks ago. It was right around the time of the Kirk shooting, and he explained that, like, he's one of these guys that claims to have worked for psyop, but it's like, I don't know about that. And then there are all kinds of downstream implications, like, why are you listening to a guy who says he works for psyop? But he did. I think he gave a really good, like, sort of concept of this, where he's like, the main thing about a psyop is that everyone who's actually involved in doing the psyop pretty much believes that that their specific narrow task is the point of the psyop. But actually, usually only maybe one or two, or preferably zero people actually really understand
right. Yeah. You have a bunch of discrete parts. So everyone is trying. It's a bunch of blind people in a room trying to describe an elephant by touching it.
Yeah.
Where, one guy's like, well, it's this rubbery snake, and another one is like, oh, it's a big leather sheet, and another one, so on and so forth. It's a tree trunk, yeah.
So Nick Fuentes, it's the Nick Fuentes. Who is the guy that's in Brazil?
I don't know. Oh, Glenn Greenwald.
Yeah, Glenn Greenwald and Nick Fuentes are streaming tonight. You just described it.
Yeah, that's right. We just got another super from Hambros. Spreading the wealth because I'm flush, lads. Recently got Dave Portnoy's mom's number. She was wearing a short sleeve shirt. So true. You just she had it on her wrist. So thank you very much for the $20, Ham. You are a gentleman. Let's see. Attention should also be paid to the Model Code's definition of culpability. Section 2.02, General Requirements of Culpability. Subsection 1, Minimum Requirements of Culpability, except as provided in Section 2.05. A person is not guilty of an offense unless he acted purposely, knowingly, recklessly, or negligently, as the law may require, with respect to each element of the offense. 2. Kinds of culpability. A. Purposely. A person acts purposely with respect to a material element of an offense when, if the element involves the nature of his conduct or the result thereof, it is his conscious object to engage in conduct of the nature or to cause such a result, and if the element involves the attendant circumstances or he believes or hopes that they exist. Knowingly, a person knowingly acts with respect to a material element of an offense when, if the element involves the nature of his conduct or the attendant circumstances, he is aware that his conduct is of that nature or that such circumstances exist, and if the element involves results of his conduct, he is aware that it is practically certain that his conduct will cause such a result. Of course, yeah. So you have a guilty mind. You have mens rea, right?
Like every lawyer in the country, I just chat GPT'd that.
What? Mens rea?
I know what it is. It is.
For the minimalist conspiracy to be made out, therefore, only two things are truly necessary. Oswald was a paid FBI informant and or CIA asset spying upon pro-Castro groups. So true. That is the minimum. That is the minimalist conspiracy according to the U.S. Penal Code. So that does make sense. Like if you are working with one other person to do something that is subaltern, it is de facto and de jure a conspiracy, right? So this is perhaps the most verifiable part of Lee's signature nomadic reality. Oswald functioned as a provocateur in New Orleans and was in contact with pro-Castro and anti-Castro Cuban exiles, as well as double agents representing themselves as both. Oswald would have to have been a right-wing CIA mole penetrating and ultimately discrediting the pro-Castro communities of both New Orleans and Dallas. This would not necessarily mean, however, that he was an intelligence asset at the time that he undertook his famous defection to the Soviet Union. He could have been a genuine dissenter, became disillusioned, returned to the U.S., was then recruited as an informant, and then began acting out his fantasies of espionage. It is of great interest that I Led Three Lives, a television series about an FBI agent masquerading as a communist spy, was Oswald's favorite television program as a youngster, and reputedly had a tremendous psychological effect on him. So this guy is saying that Oswald was not a real commie.
I have never identified with a number of paragraphs of text so thoroughly
as you currently do with Lee Harvey Oswald.
Yeah, like the story of my life. I even got to the "You Are Here," and I was like, "Oh, yeah." If you want to find out where the "You Are Here" moment was, you better sneed those super chats.
That's right, Ryan Gosling and on. But what if none dare called it a conspiracy? That's right. Hey, that's the book we read. That's still in the opening song. Yeah, I mean, I'm going to say that Lee Harvey Oswald was actually a communist, mostly because that is the narrative in Don DeLillo's Libra, and Don DeLillo's Libra is authoritative. So,
Like Lee Harvey Oswald himself, I'm so far beyond whether or not I was really a communist. I mean, he was really a communist. You know, what does it matter at this point? What difference at this point does it make? Is my story with Lee Harvey? Okay, sure, you were a communist, but like, were you a communist? Like, there's so many other places he's a genuine communist, but he's a Trotskyite, and his defection into Khrushchev's USSR is like this strange crossover story with the FBI or the CIA. There's still so many possibilities that even Mr. Wilson hasn't countenanced, you know?
Whomst among us has not defected to the USSR under Khrushchev and tried to enter Lumumba University? Whomst among us? Whomst among us has not met our hardworking and lovely Russian bride, Marina, working in a factory while attempting to go to school, only to be rebuffed because Lumumba University was for blacks. If you couldn't tell from the name. So yeah, tragic. Let's see. Randall Shirker says, wasn't one of the authors of Principia Discordia a friend to Lee Harvey Oswald when the two of them were in the Marines? That is true. That is correct. We talked about this a couple episodes back.
It was Randall Shirker. The way to tell us you weren't listening.
Yeah. So Omar Khayyam Ravenhurst, aka Ken Thornley, I believe, wrote a whole book about Lee Harvey Oswald prior to the Kennedy assassination. Exactly. Which is one of the weirdest things. So,
of all the people in the world to write a book about, Lee Harvey Oswald. I mean, again, he does have an interesting life. Like,
he has a very interesting CV.
Yeah.
Let's see. Robert Oswald, Lee's eldest brother, remembers Lee watching the show intensely when he, Robert, left home to join the Marine Corps in 1952. My opinion of what he got out of I Led 3 Lives and other programs of a similar nature, e.g. The Fugitive, was that he could put on a facade and pretend to be somebody he wasn't. Robert would later consider the meaning for Lee. It probably opened up a new world for him where you could appear to be something, then appear to be somebody else. To me, that was a training ground. If you're playing Cowboys and Indians, you stop being the Cowboys and Indians when you stop playing. But with Lee, with the I Led 3 Lives type show, he was still being somebody, even though the show was over, the game was over. He still played another role.
I don't know about that. I don't know if I like this because for this.
You don't think he got the idea from a TV show?
No, not at all.
Well, most of the people in the chat haven't met me, but I'm sure that when you made my acquaintance in Meat Space, you were probably shocked to find that I was actually a 6 foot tall anthropomorphic turtle, and that's because when I was a child, I watched a lot of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Yeah. Same.
It was very impactful for me, and that's why I learned ninjutsu and became a turtle. So
I thought you were going to be a Teletubby.
No. I was far too old for Teletubbies. That's right. Throughout his nomadic / clandestine migrations, Oswald may very well have been aided and encouraged in his private restaging of the integrated spectacle by his various low-level controllers. There is no more supremely Debordian moment in the spectacle of JFK Dallas than this: Lee Harvey Oswald's solipsistic transformation of the visual into the real. Although Robert Oswald's account has been questioned on numerous occasions, it was substantiated by Marguerite Oswald's, Lee's mother, own testimony to... Wow. Okay, so there were 2 lines of footnote on the previous page, and the footnote continues, to be 3/4 of the following page and then a little like a tenth of the one after it. So this is a great, powerful footnoting here.
This is literal academia meet. This is academia after David Foster Wallace.
Oh my God. You know, Wendy, honestly, I kind of feel bad for not reading the footnotes in Aberration in the Heartland of the Real when we were doing it. But unfortunately, you know, they're at the end of the section. So if we had done that, it would have been impossible.
Wendy is a true aristocrat and uses endnotes.
Yeah, that's right. Marguerite Oswald's own testimony to the Warren Commission on February 12, 1964, which, of course, does not necessarily prove anything. In any event, there is an undeniable element of high strangeness in Oswald's relationship with culture, both high and popular. For example, his favorite opera was Tchaikovsky's adaptation of Alexander Pushkin's The Queen of Spades.
No.
Oswald attended several performances while in the Soviet Union. That kind of means something different nowadays, doesn't it?
Well, I mean, it's sort of like, again, I'm like, oh man, it's like he's just like me gets worse and worse.
Yeah. Let's see. Oswald attended several performances while in the Soviet Union. As the hip reader might be aware, the Queen of Hearts playing card was the trigger mechanism that controlled the homicidal actions of the Manchurian Candidate, Sergeant Raymond Shaw, in both eponymous novel and film. Frank Sinatra mentioned.
Literally every book we read mentions the Manchurian Candidate.
Yeah, if you don't have the Manchurian Candidate mentioned in your book, I will not read it. We should probably watch that. We should do a double feature on Drive Time where we watch.
What was the other one?
There's two versions of the Manchurian Candidate.
No, but you had another movie last week that you had also, like, we could do that as a next time y'all are blank.
Last week was K-pop Demon Hunters.
No. I mean, last week on this show there was another movie.
There was another one that was mentioned. Yeah, that's right. I don't remember what it was, but yeah, we can do that.
Let's ask
trigger mechanism that controlled the homicidal actions of the Manchurian Candidate. In addition to the John Frankenheimer film, two other movies that may have been viewed by Oswald close to the time of the Dealey Plaza was Suddenly, a 1954, and which, like the Manchurian Candidate, starred Frank Sinatra, amazing, which concerned an alienated ex-serviceman who plots to assassinate the U.S. president, riding in the open-air presidential limousine using a long-range telescopic rifle. Telescopic rifle is not the right. The telescopic is not what, like, you don't like pull the rifle out. Like, the rifle doesn't get longer. Like, right?
Oh no, yeah, it's got a telescopic scope on it. Though. Remember,
it's got a sight. I get it. I'm just saying, like, weird phrasing.
Remember, like all lefties, he doesn't know anything about guns.
Yeah. And We Were Strangers, 1949, starring blacklisted communist fellow traveler John Garfield, who hates Mondays and unsuccessfully attempts to blow up the tyrannical president of Cuba, Gerardo Mercado, who was, in fact, overthrown in 1933. In her testimony to the Warren Commission, Marguerite Oswald stated that Lee saw those films. I was with him when we watched them. Don DeLillo repeats this in his novel Libra on page 370. Thanks for the note. Far more strange and disturbing than Oswald's relationship to cinema was John Kennedy's. Apparently, it was the president himself who pressed Frankenheimer, the director of The Manchurian Candidate, to undertake a film adaptation of the novel 7 Days in May, which outlined an abortive coup d'etat of the U.S. government by the Joint Chiefs of Staff. For discussion, see Talbot. In Talbot's somewhat melodramatic prose, the fact that the president of the United States was driven to enlist the support of show business friends in his struggle with the military underscores how embattled he must have felt. A little bit of the pot calling the kettle black there.
Well, but again, here, look, I want this narrative that's building. We're building this image of the embattled president. So, like, you know, our boy Wilson, Charlie Wilson here, is like lightly thumbing the scales here.
Eric Wilson.
Yeah, Eric Wilson.
Who the fuck is Gary Allen? According to Kennedy courtier Arthur Schlesinger, certainly we did not control the Joint Chiefs of Staff. For JFK's estrangement from his generals, Chief of the Air Force Curtis LeMay in particular, see pages 66 through 70 in this book, rumor has it that the fascistic leader of the military coup in 7 Days in May, General James Mattoon Scott, was based on LeMay.
Always.
The cinematic connection even extends to the assassination of Robert Kennedy. The senator was staying at Frankenheimer's Malibu home when he was shot in the Ambassador Hotel in Los Angeles. Furthermore, Frankenheimer encountered RFK's assassin Sirhan Sirhan in the Ambassador. Ironically, Sirhan had brushed by Frankenheimer during Kennedy's victory speech, as the director stood watching Bobby on a TV monitor in the ballroom archway. It was the Manchurian Candidate, Frankenheimer later said. I felt this shaking inside me. That's actually fucking amazing.
Also, for people who don't know, like Saran, the assassination of Bobby Kennedy went way differently than the assassination of Jack, and Saran like immediately started doing this Manchurian Candidate act, which, to my knowledge, he still continues. I think he's still alive.
Yeah, he is. Yeah, he's still in prison in California. Yep. He was up for parole like not too long ago. He was denied parole in August of 2024 and is eligible for another parole hearing in 2027. Amazing. Yeah. How old is this guy?
He's in his 80s.
81. Yeah. Man, talk about throwing your whole fucking life away. Anyway, Oswald was under hold on. There is no more supremely Debordian moment in the spectacle of JFK Dallas than this Lee Harvey Oswald solipsistic transformation of the virtual into the real. Possibility B, Oswald was under the operational control of a CIA or military intelligence officer who was also a planner of the assassination. In the somewhat dramatic prose of Warren Hinkle, man, on this page, he twice offers criticism on stylistic criticism of other authors. Oswald was now in the most dangerous of worlds. He was acting out pro-Castro pantomimes under the command of a violently anti-Castro cabal dominated by autonomous intelligence operatives and mob elements. In New Orleans.
Here we go. Wait, real talk. One of my best friends here is a pro Castro right winger.
Really?
Yeah, not even lie.
He's just into dictators in general.
Yes.
In New Orleans, the list of probable CIA and or FBI Oswald handlers would have included Guy Bannister.
This is the guy. This is him.
Well, we're gonna get a list of ships here. Guy Bannister, remarkably, Kurtz himself was a witness to the communist pro-Cuban Oswald's contact with former head of the Chicago office of the FBI, Bannister. I myself saw Oswald and Bannister when they visited the campus of Louisiana State University in New Orleans, when Bannister condemned racial integration. I also saw them at a table at Macuso's restaurant, located in the same building as Bannister's office. David Ferry.
David Ferry.
Yeah, right. Well, David the Ferry, more like. The probable recruiter of the teenage Oswald in the Civil Air Patrol, which may have constituted the very beginning of his double life. And Clay Shaw. Shaw was the New Orleans contact for the Domestic Contact Division, overseen by Tracy Barnes. For both Shaw and Ferry as CIA contacts, see Hinkle and Turner, Ferry was apparently employed as a contract agent for the CIA in the early 1960s, responsible for maintaining contact with the New Orleans community of anti-Castro Cubans. It has been established that at sometime between 1955 and 1956, the adolescent Oswald was a cadet member of the New Orleans branch of the Civilian Air Patrol, headed by Ferry. There is a possibility that Ferry either did or attempted to sexually molest Oswald. Yes, he did. Yes, he did.
Like 0% chance that didn't happen.
Yep. Because it's in Libra, of course. And Joe Pesci played David Ferree, the creepiest Pesci performance, easily. In Dallas, the obvious CIA contact would have been with contract agent George D. Mohrenschildt. De Mohrenschildt committed suicide in 1977, several hours after investigator Gaten Fonzie had made contact with him on behalf of the House Select Committee on Assassinations. De Mohrenschildt's wife was apparently a good friend of several of the CIA's usual suspects. De Mohrenschildt's wife, Jean, also had a long history of working in intelligence, and numbered among her friends and former operatives in the CIA Richard Helms, the agency's future director James McCord, a close friend of Helms, and the future Watergate burglar Hunter Leak, an agent who worked at the agency's large New Orleans office, and David Atlee Phillips, head of the CIA's Western Hemisphere division. Soaking in spooks here.
What a title.
However, none of these individuals appear to. Did you see that was another footnote that went on to the following page? However, none of these.
It's like trying to read a potato. I'm literally relying on you.
Well, that's just like the rest of the audience,
right? Yeah, exactly.
However, none of these individuals appear to have been senior enough to actually engage in both the planning and, even more importantly, the implementation of counter-propaganda operations necessary for the successful performance of a false flag event. This could only have been accomplished by positioning Oswald with the large network of the Cuban paramilitaries that were themselves under the supervision of senior-level CIA officers. The only way individual militant Cuban exiles could act against JFK would be to place the apparent blame on Fidel Castro. No matter how hot their passion or how much support was offered, that was the only method that would allow them to actively target Kennedy without themselves dooming their cause. The use of a Castro-connected patsy was critical. Without a credible and maneuverable patsy, any attack on Kennedy would have been self-defeating. That patsy became visible to them in New Orleans in July of 1963. He became irresistible when they were informed that he was more than simply a naive revolutionary sympathizer, but was in reality a low-level intelligence dangle who they could play at will. Accordingly, one of the major roles of the exiles in the conspiracy was managing and manipulating Lee Oswald. It was the exiles who contacted him, represented themselves as Castro agents, and continued contact with him up to the time of the assassination. The exiles were aware that Oswald was playing a role himself and that he had to maneuver him by continuing to represent themselves as Castroites. Drawing upon my list of usual suspects from the CIA, I find there to be two medium-level case officers of particular interest. Let's see.
I don't know. I have a hard time countenancing this because I'm firmly in camp, fully agentic and relatively aware Lee Harvey Oswald did this shit acting in concert with other members of the organization, the agency.
Yeah.
I think this shit was strapped up tight. I do think the Soviets were involved. Oh my God, I'm getting into my own personal takes here.
This is your personal theory on the JFK assassination?
Yeah, I mean, I think the CIA elements of the CIA and elements of, in particular, probably Mossad, but there's a certain overlap between Mossad and both the KGB and the CIA, and I think that sort of muddles the waters. And I don't think the Soviet government was directly responsible for it, but I think the CIA and Soviet-leaning members of the random bloodbath mercenary intelligence agency that is Mossad were involved. That's what I think. That's my personal pet theory. I don't buy I told y'all the local theory last week, the one about Carlos Marcello. I don't really buy that one.
All right. Tracy Barnes. As assistant director of plans to Richard Bissell for the Bay of Pigs, Barnes personally recruited many of the CIA usual suspects for the Cuba project: E. Howard Hunt, David Lee Phillips, and David Morales. Barnes's association with both Bissell and the mafia contact John Roselli placed Barnes at the center of virtually every CIA assassination project of the early 1960s. And of the greatest significance, after Bissell's forcible transfer to the Institute for Defense Analysis following Zapata, Barnes was appointed head of the Domestic Operations Division of the CIA, the branch responsible for the creation and operation of CIA front companies, and apparently exercising oversight of the Domestic Contact Service, which handled monitoring of informants and defectors. This branch was also responsible for the 201 files which were opened for every person considered by the agency to be of potential intelligence or counterintelligence significance. On December 9th, 1960, a 201 was opened on Oswald, almost 1 year following his apparent defection to the Soviet Union. An unusual time lag. The file was controlled by Angleton's SGI Morley. On November 9th, 1959, Oswald was put on the CIA watch list, which permitted operatives to read his mail. This program of postal interception was codenamed HT Lingual and was administered by Angleton's SGI group. John Newman had speculated that Oswald was a person of interest to the CIA even prior to his infamous defection to the USSR in November 1959, and that he might have been part of the program run by CIA's Russia division known as Soviet Realities, which was dedicated to obtaining information about social and economic conditions in Russia through the monitoring of defectors, many of whom, of course, were not. Let's see.
I don't buy the defection. I don't buy the defection at all.
You think the defection was fake?
Yeah, and I think he's working in the field for the CIA.
Okay.
Have you ever seen the spy who came in the cold?
Hold on. As Simpic has put it, if there was anything of greater value than a defector, it was a redefector such as Oswald. Even if a redefector had nothing to do with intelligence, such a person was the functional equivalent of a double agent. James Angleton himself later testified to the Church Commission Committee in 1975 that the redefection of Oswald should have been the highest priority for the intelligence community. Interesting. High praise. Oops. Hold on.
Now, Angleton is interesting here because it's not really clear what Angleton probably has his own Angle son, you know? Okay, so like the only reason he's bringing it up in this context is really because he's very interested in counterintelligence. But to me, what he brings up is that, again, it's most likely that he is a spy who gets brought in from the cold.
So, okay, explain that.
That he's doing field work, like actual field work. Like if you're familiar with the novels of John le Carre.
I've never read a le Carre novel.
No way.
Nope, I've never read one.
No way. My favorite movie ever is The Spy Who Came In From the Cold. That's the one you got to. But le Carre is really famous for going into the incredible detail of like what field work in the early Cold War was like. Okay. And Oswald fits the shape of someone who field agents usually, they're not like James Bond. They're usually not doing anything particularly interesting. Like they're like, maybe keep notes in a week that were about as long as you could roll up, as you could like roll up in like a Chinese fortune cookie. But
yeah,
you know, but you also have this, the only tool you have is this very special ink pen and a magnifying glass that you can use to fit way more information on that one little sheet of paper than you imagine. And then once a week, you go to this Chinese restaurant and you get Chinese food and you're handed a handful of fortune cookies. And those are fortune cookies that have all been collected from the individual agents who are doing the information gathering. And your job is to walk around the block, go to this Chinese restaurant, come back, pick up this Chinese food, come back, and then do some insane shit like broadcast it at 2:00 in the morning in encrypted click speak
on a numbers station.
No, literally, that's how nuts it is. But the extraction back from the Soviet Union was incredibly dicey, and there were essentially two ways to do it. One of them was to literally fucking walk through the Berlin Wall, and you get to, or people regularly jumped it. Okay, there were you either jump it, or you can fabricate some reason. You can disguise yourself as a laborer, because it never really stopped. Like traffic between these two, because West Berlin was an island. And there would be reasons in East German contract labor would be getting sent, some people still had the special passes and the ability to go back and forth somewhat. But it's a fraught, it is the most militarized space in the world for quite some time, and it is a fraught experience every time you do it. And especially because the Soviets in particular had a tendency to wait until you were very out in the open. If they might have already known they were going to shoot you, but they would let you get most of the way there before they shot you. And this is so you have you go over the Berlin Wall, or you can get extracted via the Black Sea is the other way they go out. But it's either way, getting someone out is tough. Getting two people out is tough, but the other way is a really strange redefection scenario that in many cases involves cooperating somewhat.
You just get a visa, yeah.
In order to go that route, that involves almost even another level of complexity, which means a defector who's working for the CIA, but who is also vaguely Soviet sympathetic and might also be cooperating with the KGB.
Yep. Yeah. and that is Oswald got a visa to go to the Soviet Union, and he also got a visa to leave. He just walked across the border.
You can do things. You can just do things.
You can just do things if you're Lee Harvey Oswald for some reason. In 1963, domestic operations might well have been the starting point for Lee Oswald being considered an asset in specific CIA intelligence collection projects, dangles, such as the documented 1963 project targeting the FPCC, Fair Play for Cuba Committee, first in the United States and then in Latin America. The FPCC was founded in April 1960 by pro-Castro American journalist Robert Tabor, who subsequently resigned his presidency in February 1962. By this time, the organization had become a hopeless muddle of government informers, psychopaths, communists, black militants, liberal social activists, and socialists who carried with them agendas that clashed with the group's modest objectives.
I wish every day I wake up and wish I was alive in the 1960s. What a party that sounds like,
If Oswald was indeed a CIA asset, which seems almost certain, then the Domestic Contact Service would have been the subdivision handling Oswald's case file. In the estimation of Larry Hancock, it is certainly possible that Oswald was used in a minor fashion for FPCC intelligence collection, something which grew into a much more aggressive propaganda program in New Orleans, and then into an extension of that project in Mexico City. Such an extension would likely have been coordinated by the new Cuban affairs officer, David Phillips, and monitored by Angleton's CISIG internal security group. The possible role of Barnes, of course, also increases the likelihood of Angleton's own involvement, who emerges as the most interesting suspect at the most senior level of the CIA. The files maintained by the Special Investigations Group were not part of the CIA's regular record-keeping system, but were maintained in the archive controlled by Angleton. The program sought to generate leads for new covert operations to be mounted by Angleton himself. Apparently, Angleton had a fondness for off-the-books operations, establishing his own private command channels and communications that effectively bypassed CIA stations and flowed directly to his office in Washington. Following Angleton's forced retirement in 1974, the CIA destroyed all of his files on the Kennedy assassination.
They also destroyed all of his files on the Students for a Democratic Society.
Yeah.
Because there was all kinds of juicy James Jesus Angleton stuff that just got destroyed one day.
Imagine being like in the CIA of the CIA. That's James Jesus Angleton. He's the guy that all the other agents called a spook. Yeah.
Well, yeah, he's the counterintelligence guy. So it's like he's the guy with a special interest in operating a personal network inside the network. But it's like I said last week, all of these guys are doing that. Like, it's not just him. He was the one that was the most prolific about it and probably the most competent. And again, the fact that his records were destroyed in such a high profile way, but that's the daily information climate these guys are all operating in because James Jesus Angleton has a personal network that's reporting directly to him. But the reason he has one is because he assumes there's another one somewhere. And this is just good practice, And so like the basic assumption is that everyone is keeping, and they're functionally all keeping a stash on each other. Did you know that this is a point in time, again, to tie in the MK Ultra shit, this is a point in time when LSD was being used widely, okay? And not just on special mind control experiments. They had fun with it for a long time. And there was a thing among agency operatives, especially the foreign field workers, kind of the career type field workers, the people who would be one step above what Oswald is doing here. So again, the low level careerists, they would carry a vial when they would go to meetings with other members of the agency or aligned intelligence agencies. They had instead of fraternities have challenge coins and little strange rituals. One of the fads among them was to dose one another with LSD without the other being able to tell. And so then you just be, you'd gotten got. So there's this whole atmosphere of paranoia all over the place all the time. And paranoid people have enemies too. James Jesus Angleton did in fact have enemies, and they got him in 1974,
Yeah. So let's see here. Let's just go to, we'll just continue. Actually, hold on. Randall Shirker says, CIA had interest in LSD. All right. Randall Shirker, if we're talking about the Students for a Democratic Society, there's also a Jolly on West connection there, just so you know. I am not aware of that. Can you explain that in the chat, Randall? Thank you. David Atlee Phillips / Maurice Bishop. What makes Phillips a suspect of outstanding interest is that his entire career at the CIA was dedicated to the stage managing with uneven success of extraordinarily elaborate clandestine spectacles. Next to Oswald himself, Phillips was the most Debordian character in my minimalist scenario. A lifelong frustrated thespian. Whenever possible during his agency career, wherever he was stationed, Phillips would invariably start or join a little theater group. Interesting. Phillips rose rapidly through the ranks of the agency, establishing his reputation among his peers as the expert in the field of counterintelligence, psyops, and propaganda.
Beautiful.
Phillips was told that he had the qualifications the agency looked for in a propaganda specialist, and his theatrical training thereafter concentrated on the techniques of propaganda and political action. Randall Shirker says, basically, Jolly on West was part of a lot of civil rights protests, but in addition, a lot of his reduction of violence research would be targeted at a group influenced by SDS-connected terror groups. Oh, interesting. Yeah, I have his, I have not read it yet. I just got his contribution to the assassination political violence series of manuscripts from Kirkham Levy Cotty. So
wait, who's that?
What? Jolly on West.
Oh, okay.
Yep. Interesting. Yeah, I haven't read it yet, but I think that's probably what you're referring to. So interesting. Where did you? I want to know where you heard that, because I'm really digging in more. Oh, right. Yeah, I definitely knew that West had connections with the Symbionese Liberation Army. Yeah, who would be influenced by the Weather Underground, etc.
Is the Symbionese Liberation Army? Is that the
Patty
one?
Hearst. That's Patty Hearst.
That's the one where West had a connection with them. West had entanglements with them before they turned into violent terrorists. And then whenever they were arrested for being violent terrorists, he whisked the situation. He escalated the situation quickly and took personal charge of it.
He ended up being on the defense team for Patty Hearst.
Yeah. Man.
And thereby injected a lot of CIA narratives into the public consciousness,
right?
These groups.
Like, what was his purpose there? Was it had anything to do with Patty Hearst, or was he there to promote, some oblique thing that we are never going to find out about? Who knows?
Both, but also but also there were like a bunch of brainwashing and other like mind control researchers who were all on her defense, or were all on Patty Hearst's defense team.
God, this used to be such an incredible country.
Yeah. And and their work essentially added a lot of these concepts to the zeitgeist, and like that the Patty Hearst trial was kind of the origin for a lot of these things. So but of course, like the person who did brainwash Patty Hearst, whose name was, I think, David Fry, was a subject of West's. So like,
dude, there's just so much going on here. Like, I want everybody to stop for a moment and just appreciate. There was a point in time when the zaniest shit imaginable, the zaniest things in the world were being done by white dudes who like had Ivy League careers and were like casual thespians, all the way down to random Cuban migrants and white dudes in New Orleans with a decidedly proletarian background and had favorite operas. So this is incredible. It's an incredible world. America in the 1960s was actual utopia.
Yeah. There is a, and Randall Shirker says, I literally only found this connection because I was studying up on the Weather Underground and kept seeing strange connections pop up here and there. The thing about Jolyon West is that he is like the thread that makes the sweater come apart, because there is a like, Robert Caro's The Power Broker, which like made Robert Moses someone who was known. Like, it secured Robert Moses's place in history, basically, because despite his outsized influence on urbanism generally and New York specifically, he was not broadly known outside of niche areas. But there is a Power Broker level biography waiting to be written about Jolyon West that will make the 20th century a lot more coherent.
Yeah, it's just it's all coming together now.
Yeah. So anyway, his success as an agent were mainly the areas of propaganda, psychological warfare, and counterintelligence. Phillips was selected by the agency to play an important role in overthrowing Jacobo Arbenz's leftist regime in Guatemala in 1954. Operation PB Success. Phillips' task was to set up a clandestine radio station in Mexico, the Voice of Liberation, and while pretending to be broadcasting from within Guatemala, orchestrate a crescendo of false reports about legions of rebels which didn't exist and major battles that never took place. This, his first major assignment for the CIA, Phillips demonstrated a particular propensity for the mirror images so prevalent in counterintelligence craft. For instance, part of the Voice of Liberation's mission was to generate disinformation that would foment and confuse a confusing array of rumors among the populace. Under such a propaganda barrage, the Arbenz government fled the country before many real bullets could fly. Phillips later termed the technique, which he would use again, the big lie. Amazing. Amazing. What a sick, what the absolutely sick with it. What an op. Bravo. Bravo. PB success, when looked at in greater detail, carries with it two extremely discomforting implications for JFK Dallas. The first is that it illustrates the degrees to which the spectacle is the inverted mirror image of the situation, executed with a panache and brazenness that any true situationist, or Orson Welles, could only impotently envy. An operation of enormous complexity, PB success was divided into two prongs. One, a limited paramilitary infiltration of Guatemala by a small band of anti-Arbenz forces led by American puppet Carlos Castillo Armas, supported by limited air raids by CIA-owned World War II surplus aircraft. The CIA's private fucking Air Force. One of the major airfields for this Phantom Air Force was at Puerto Cabezas on the eastern coast of Nicaragua. During the Bay of Pigs, it was reused as one of the major launching sites for air attacks against Cuba. And two, an entire network of black propaganda or black ops radio stations based in Republica Dominica, Managua, Honduras, and most importantly, within the U.S. Embassy in Guatemala City itself. Phillips' network, the Voice of Liberation, effectively bridged the divide between conventional disinformation. A typical broadcast assured listeners it is not true that the waters of Lake Atitlan have been poisoned. Let's see. To overt simulation, successfully manufacturing the mass illusion of an entire civil war that was not actually taking place.
So amazing. It's so beautiful.
It's beautiful.
This is why, by the way, would people ask where all the literary talent went, where all the white guys with literary talent went in the later half of the 20th century? The answer is the CIA. This is not even what it is. And
you know, CIA, the artists, true artists.
Yeah, when you get to the point where, like, you know, because he's doing all this Debordian stuff, and he's like really he's like talking about the inverted mirror and everything. When Marxist historians decide to talk about this shit with respect to like the Middle Ages and stuff, when they push their analogies that far back, I lose it entirely. But here, I'm totally on board because it's worth mentioning that this is also the CIA, which at this very moment in time, you know, arguably, and for reasons I'm not going into on this stream, I'm aware that the Frankfurt School theorist Herbert Marcuse was on side, okay, you know, and so he's the very theorists that are coming up with that Wilson is using here are alive and operating at the time, sometimes in conjunction with the intelligence agencies. So these interpretations are real. Okay, so it is totally actually possible that the CIA themselves are considering this like an inverted mirror narrative. They're doing all of these narrative calisthenics that Wilson is now imagines himself as counter doing. This is why I'm willing to put up with it on subjects like that.
Let's see. During a nighttime raid, the Americans played a tape recording of a bombing attack over loudspeakers set up on the U.S. Embassy roof that heightened the anxiety of the Capitol's residents. Literally just doing it's actual terrorism. Yeah. And an entire rebel army that did not really exist. The Voice of Liberation, quote, "At our command post here in the jungle," the U.S. Embassy, "we are unable to confirm or deny the report that Castillo Armas has an army of 5,000 men. These radiographic hallucinations were subsequently picked up and circulated globally by the International Press Corps. At no point did Armas have more than 400 men under his command."
But the thing that amazes me is they're just doing this. They're doing this as radio. They're just broadcasting radio waves. Like there's can you imagine even the El Salvadoran government can figure out that, you know, you're not in the country you claim to be broadcasting from or about. Right. You know,
right. Frightened Guatemalans listening to the CIA radio broadcast began fleeing from Guatemala City, not wanting to be caught in the tremendous battle believed imminent for control of the capital. Voice of Liberation announcers actually appealed to the fleeing refugees to make way for the non-existent rebel columns. Few of the panicked citizens stopped to wonder why, in their flight along the major highways, they never encountered any advancing soldiers. With no one he could trust to give him accurate information, President Arbenz could no longer be certain that there wasn't at least some truth to the radio bulletin. The second is that virtually all of the major operators of PB Success, David Atlee Phillips, Tracy Barnes, E. Howard Hunt, Rip Robertson, reappear as key members of the usual suspects for JFK Dallas. And a few of them, such as Hunt, reappeared a second time with Nixon Watergate. Through and around Phillips was a semi-permanent unit or crew, if I can use this word, who were both closely linked with extremist reactionary political and paramilitary groups throughout Central America and the Caribbean, and who were also proficient in psyops and counterintelligence. In fact, this semi-nomadic unit, including other members such as David Harvey, Theodore Shackley, and David Morales, transverses the shadow spaces of numerous black bag operations and may, in fact, have been in existence as early as the late 1940s. Many of them appear to have made initial contact with each other while serving in the CIA station in Berlin, the Berlin Operating Base, or BOB. Other members included Henry Heckscher, who appears to have been senior field officer for PB Success. Members of the unit also shared a fondness for basing their manifold command and control centers in Miami. Headquarters for PB Success was on Opa-locka Marine Air Force Base in Miami, consisting of a group of offices covertly secreted directly above a nursery school. Let's see.
Wait, hold on. Randall Shirker says, so basically, Sandbatch, the CIA was white boy summer for 3 decades. And that is, this was like, we took too much, actually. Like, this is all the crescendo of it. Like, this is, like I said in like a few episodes ago, when it comes to like the white Anglo-Saxon Protestant world, this is the climax.
This is, it's all downhill from here. That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Let's see here. Where was I? Oh, yeah. While JM Wave was based at the University of Miami using CIA front company Zenith Technical Enterprises Incorporated as cover. It is beyond dispute that for the CIA, it was the psychological actions of the invasion force that were truly significant. In fairness to the citizens of Guatemala City in 1954, belief in spontaneous materialization of a rebel army was not in itself inherently implausible given national political conditions of that time. There was considerable political opposition to the Arbenz government among the traditional elites who had remained and were highly active within the country. This was in marked contrast to Cuba, where virtually the entirety of the pro-Batista establishment had either fled or were exiled to Miami, where, not surprisingly, Phillips' spectacular theater met with resounding failure. Let's see. As a result, in April 1961, as part of Zapata, Phillips was appointed director of all propaganda/counterintelligence operations for the Bay of Pigs. This included the oversight of Radio Swan, a CIA broadcasting station located on Greater Swan Island, 97 miles off the coast of Honduras, the very same black radio station that had been used with such great success in PB Success. During the Bay of Pigs, Radio Swan's greatest accomplishment was the unleashing of a cascade of weirdly beautiful situationist images upon the resisting Cubans. Alert! Alert! Look well at the rainbow. The fish will rise soon. Chico is in the house. Visit him. The sky is blue. The fish will not take much time to rise. The fish is red. As with PB Success, these messages were intended to simulate the presence of an organized counter-revolutionary force. This time, however, the unreal was actually the real. There was no domestic revolt against Castro.
This is fascinating. Okay, again, just to interrupt, this is what nobody ever reads Schmidt the right way. This, when Schmidt's talking about political scripts, this is a political script. Okay, so this is something they run on Guatemala, they run somewhere else, and they look at, then they say, well, we'll just run the same game on Cuba. But Cuba doesn't work, okay, because again, we can talk about the reactionary elite or whatever, but the other thing is that who is in Cuba?
The Russians.
The Russians are also in Cuba. So all of a sudden, this is actually a near peer engagement. It's not just janking around like 200-year-old banana republics anymore. Like this is
Right.
you're in the major leagues now, and the Russians are like, there's no.
And the
fucking
Russians
way.
are like, there is no fucking way.
Yeah. Yeah.
There is no fucking way. Bleh, suka. Yeah. So successful, in fact, that the CIA attempted to duplicate Phillips' clandestine situation as success a third time under Lansdale. Mongoose's program of propaganda, consisting of radio and television broadcasting, balloon drops of leaflets, a distribution of photo models and cartoon books by open mail, and dissemination of smuggled copies of Time magazine, was integrated to the preparation of the population in Cuba for regime change. Basic Madison Avenue techniques, such as creating musical and visual symbols to express anti-regime sentiments, were a specialty of the U.S. Information Agency, which managed the Voice of America. U.S. Information Agency, by the way, is the group that created Bella Ciao as a song in Italy. Which managed the Voice of America, and the technique of adding new words to a favorite song was a staple of political subversion, at least since The Beggar's Opera. Thus, the transmission of anti-Castro sentiment was to function seamlessly in everyday activities, capable of being passed person to person while augmenting less embodied techniques such as painted slogans. Following the Bay of Pigs, Phillips served as the chief of covert action in Mexico City from late 1961 to the autumn of 1963, coinciding with Oswald's alleged visitation to both the Soviet and Cuban consulates. How well Phillips did his work is revealed by the fact that barely 2 years into his assignment, just prior to Kennedy's assassination, he was made chief of Cuban operations there. In both jobs, his main activities were in propaganda, dirty tricks, and counterintelligence, and his central focus was on maintaining a watch on Castro's intelligence agents, many of whom worked out of the Cuban embassy. On October 1st, 1963, Phillips was promoted to chief of Cuban operations in Mexico City. As a result, Phillips' Cuban project assignment, as with Barnes, led him to activities involving domestic counterintelligence dangles against the FPCC and into the exile community of New Orleans.
There's still a lot of Cubans here.
Are there now?
Yeah.
Well, the Castro regime has not fallen. Do you think they're going to go back?
No, I mean, they're just like, this is one of those times like we're all the way into the reason why New Orleans is frequently discussed as like, what are the two cities that we're talking about here in America? It's Miami and New Orleans. These are like, with respect to the South, these are also like, every time one of those maps of like, what is the South gets passed around, like if they're going to exclude places like the hillbillies, no offense, you guys, no offense, y'all. Everyone is always trying to exclude New Orleans and Miami, and this is because there is some genuine truth. They're really just. I live in the Caribbean, is actually the truth, and Miami is also the Caribbean. But it's also true, you sandal wearers, that deleting New Orleans from the South doesn't work. It like ontologically mutates the thing. So sorry, but anyway, Cuban exit, like the perfect place. I can't believe all of this is happening. I'm like sitting here pining for a time whenever New Orleans was important.
The past is a foreign country, and it's a sick one, right?
Awesome.
Addendum to Phillips on the Lords of Misrule. You really have me consorting with a cast of sordid characters, don't you, Mr. Garrison? Clay, Bertrand / Shaw, Tommy Lee Jones, JFK. Consideration of the spectacle leads to consideration of the situation, which in turn leads directly to the problem of aesthetics. If the spectacle is the inversion of the situation, then we must move from the tremulous beauty of poetry in the street, la beauté est dans la rue, to the omnivorous obscenity of the clandestine. Upon further reflection, psyops can be shown to bear an uncanny resemblance to Mikhail Bakhtin's notion of the carnivalesque or misrule. The inversion of conventional reality, political, moral, social, or aesthetic, into its inverted double, the grotesque. When undertaking parapolitical research, one is in fact uncomfortably aware of a nomadic environment, personalities, places, events, saturated with the fundamental attributes of the grotesque style, famously defined by Bakhtin in his masterwork on Rabelais, and the carnivalesque as exaggeration, hyperbolism, and excessiveness. The grotesque, perhaps best defined as the ambivalently abnormal, is phenomenological in nature, grounded upon a horror sensorium, a fundamentally ambivalent thing, a violent clash of opposites, an appropriate expression of the problematical nature of existence. When treating the grotesque imaginary, as Bakhtin reminds us, we must always take into consideration the importance of cosmic terror, the fear of the immeasurable, the infinitely powerful. The inversion of the world is itself the ontopoetical ground of the grotesque, a world that is eternally teetering on the verge of a chaotic formlessness through the radical and uncontrollable proliferation of irreconcilable combinations, the perpetual construction of what we might call a double body. The grotesque body is a body in the act of becoming. It is never finished, never completed. It is continually built, created, and builds and creates another body. Like its aesthetic other, the sublime, the grotesque is quintessentially modern, but with this crucial distinction. Both modernism and the grotesque focus the concept of alienation, subjectivity, and absurdity, but the grotesque tends to focus on explicit representations of the ideas through disturbing imagery and actions, while modernism tends to focus on more implicit representations of these themes.
Wait, go back. Give me that definition of modernism again. By the way, is that Nick Land, or is this like what?
Honestly, it actually almost sounds like Mark Fisher wrote one of the last books he published before he roped was this little book called The Weird and the Eerie, which is basically about this same concept. More people should read it. Eric Wilson did also write. He contributed to a collection, I believe, a sort of cosmic horror, like through a political lens, which I'm guessing he probably cribbed some of this from. He was probably sort of working on it at the same time. No, but I believe that this is Mikhail Bakhtin. Yeah.
Interesting. But now go back and give me the modernism thing again. How did it define? How did it gave a kind of heuristical definition?
Both modernism and the grotesque focus on the concepts of alienation, subjectivity, and absurdity, but the grotesque tends to focus on explicit representations of these ideas through disturbing imagery and actions, while modernism tends to focus on more implicit representations of these themes. So they focus on alienation, subjectivity, and absurdity.
I don't know about alienation.
I don't really think that doesn't feel like modernism to me. That feels like post-modernity.
There's nothing I can actually say is wrong. Actually, the only one of those I think is true is subjectivity, and that's an incredibly leftist reading of modernism.
I don't actually think modernism is. I think modernism was an attempt to find the object in all things. I mean, modernity gave us like tremendous taxonomies for everything.
Yeah.
No, like,
true, but again, there's still the question of subjectivity is there by its inverse.
Yeah, but because now you're doing postmodernism.
But I mean, because this is what William Faulkner's like is like one of the who are the great modernist novelists?
I mean, I don't know.
Every okay, yeah. Wait, you have a literary podcast. Oh my god.
Yep.
Okay,
Go for it.
Okay, I'm a modern. I'm a specialist in modernism.
All right, go for it.
Okay, and but again, from the aesthetics angle, and so like modernism. If you think of the great, and I've done podcasts about this, the great literary poems of modernism. The Wasteland is essentially what the Wasteland actually is. If you just read it straight, it's a Grail quest, but the questor and the Fisher King are both fragmentary figures that revolve through a sequence of subjectivities. And so like you're getting like cut and chop subjectivities, but you're not questioning the primacy of subjectivity, which is what postmodernism kind of in a really botched way does, I think. So I don't really like, but postmodernism to me also is nothing if not just it's a modernist heresy is what it is. It's a branch of modernism. I don't really know that there's anything post about it.
Okay. That is definitely outside of the scope of this of this topic.
Oops,
so
sorry.
Yeah.
I gave you several chances to stop me.
Yeah, fair enough. Okay. In other words, the aesthetic paradigm of the grotesque requires the coming forth of a monster of some kind. Grotesque alienation is usually a result of external physical change or action communicated through imagery that may include violent acts, self-destructive behaviors, deformity, transformation, monstrous creatures, and any number of other strange or disturbing scenes. However, the physically based alienation depicted in such works is merely a catalyst or metaphor for the psychological alienation of one or more characters. I mean, body horror is extremely disturbing.
The grotesque? Well, okay, I don't want to get too far off course, but the way the grotesque is being described here is, of course, roughly correspondent with my understanding of specifically postmodernism's relationship to early 19th century romanticism, and this is what I use to call postmodernism a severely reactionary movement. But that's neither here nor there for these purposes. It's just so close to my tism, I had to mention it.
Oh no, Sandbatch's special interest.
The
grotesque alienation that arises from an enhanced self-consciousness of the protagonist of being embedded within a pre-existent, unconstructed, estranged world, the dark numinous. Ooh. That reeks of land, doesn't it?
Yes.
In modernist grotesque alienation, there is no going back. The world is not alienated due to malignant influences that can be purged, as in the older classical grotesque. In modernist grotesque alienation, the protagonist realizes that the world itself has always been alienating, and it is the illusion of stability that must be exposed for the sake of intellectual integrity. Which neatly correlates with what I call the parapolitical landscape. In modernist grotesque alienation, the protagonist realizes that the world itself has always been alienating, and that it is the illusion of stability that must be exposed for the sake of intellectual integrity. Interesting. Undertaking the most ambitious analysis of the grotesque is a formal subcategory of the modern. Wolfgang Kaiser defines this subject matter in such a way as to render most transparent the artistic and narrative similitudes between the grotesque and cosmic horror. The modern age questions the validity of the anthropological and relevance of the scientific concepts underlying the syntheses of the 19th century. The various forms of the grotesque are the most obvious and pronounced contradictions of any kind of rationalism and any systematic use of thought. For Kaiser, the grotesque consists of three signature themes. The first is the grotesque as the estranged world. It is our world which has to be transformed. Suddenness and surprise are essential elements of the grotesque. Let's see. The grotesque world or landscape, as Bakhtin makes clear, is the aesthetic continuation by other means of the phenomenological primacy of the grotesque body. Sandbatch, is your microphone working?
Is this better?
I can hear you now. Yes.
You couldn't hear me before?
No.
Was it that bad?
No, I literally couldn't hear you at all.
I was only gone for a second. I just changed.
Yeah,
devices.
I know. I know you changed
Okay.
devices. Yeah.
Okay. But I was afraid for a second. I was like,
But you changed back to the device that was not working at the beginning of the stream.
Okay.
The grotesque world or landscape, as Bakhtin makes clear, is the aesthetic continuation by other means of the phenomenological primacy of the grotesque body. Thus, the artistic logic of the grotesque image ignores the closed, smooth, and the impenetrable surface of the body and retains only its excrescences. Excrescences. Yeah, I don't know that I've never seen that word. I get that it's related to excretions, but I had never seen that word before.
It's probably
sprouts or buds
used. That might be the only time it's ever been used.
Yeah. And orifices, only that which leads beyond the body's limited space or into the body's depths. Mountains and abysses. Such is the relief of the grotesque body, or speaking in architectural terms, towers and subterranean passages. This grotesque logic is also extended to images of nature and objects in which depends, holes and convexities are emphasized. The estranged world of the grotesque, unifying both the high and the low, is therefore an artistic device deployed primarily in order to stage the mimetic rendition of trauma-inducing encounter with the radically alien sublime.
Now
that's pretty sick. Okay.
But has also sort of textbook postmodernism.
Yeah.
Filthy fucking communist, Eric.
The estranged... I'm going to reread it. The estranged world of the grotesque, unifying both the high and the low, is therefore an artistic device deployed primarily in order to stage the mimetic rendition of the trauma-inducing encounter with the radically alien sublime.
Oh, God, I wish I had a soundboard to play the sound of a meth pipe bubbling after that line.
Just like Peter Dale Scott's contemplation in the deep events of American history, the grotesque is primarily the expression of our failure to orient ourselves in the physical universe. We are so strongly afflicted and terrified because it is our world which ceases to be reliable, and we feel unable to live in this changed world. The grotesque instills fear of life rather than fear of death. Structurally, it presupposes that the categories which apply to our world view become inapplicable. The fusion of realms which we know to be separated, the abolition of the law of statics, the loss of identity, the distortion of natural size and shape, the suspension of category of objects, the destruction of personality, and the fragmentation of the historical order. So, what we're getting at here, I suppose, is that the topic of so the parapolitical is essentially to reveal the grotesque, right?
Yeah. That's good.
So yeah, you're showing that, rather than a solid surface, there's only a thin veneer of reality, and underneath is a writhing mass of disgusting awful that is actually carrying out
and you see this is I could understand the direct correlation between like sort of a very special kind of left-wingism that like starts in ferment with these people that we're talking about now, because like hippies and spooks have always gone really well together, but I can see sort of the connection to the sort of contemporary left wing, what the people who would call it parapolitics versus like whatever the fuck it is right wingers do that are slightly different, but brings like two sides of the same coin here. But yeah, revelation of the grotesque as the purpose of parapolitics. But this is where I would pull a Nick Land, and I would say, but you haven't gone far enough. You haven't assumed the spectacle nearly enough, which is that you made the mistake of assuming that once you revealed the grotesque, that there would still be somebody there left that there was any audience left for your revelation.
Oh God. Right. Oh my God. Okay. Second, what Kaiser denotes as the grotesque is a play with the absurd, signified by the operational hegemony of determinism, natural or otherwise, and the concomitant manipulation of reality by occult forces. The unity of perspective in the grotesque consists in an unimpassioned view of life on earth as an empty, meaningless puppet play or a caricatural marionette theater. And we've discussed previously that I feel that I do believe in radical agency and ubiquitous influence, and so this
that's pretty far out.
What they are putting forth here is the opposite of the view that I previously espoused.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So, and third is the rather convoluted, the grotesque as an attempt to invoke and subdue the demonic aspects of the world, which may perhaps be best defined in the following manner. In spite of all the helplessness and horror inspired by the dark forces which lurk in and behind our world and have the power to estrange it, the truly artistic portrayal effects a secret liberation. The darkness has been sighted, the ominous powers discovered, the incomprehensible forces challenged.
Now, like if anybody's doing synthesis in their mind here, so like this, especially thinking of Wonderland Shadow, who seems to have like been given lunch money from his mother, and he's like come skipping out of the house, all hopped up on sugar and Saturday morning cartoons. That if you like consider that paragraph, and then consider the phrase "coldness be my God," that's where Nick Land sort of tripped up and went further than the left, and they were like, too far. Okay, so like the revelation of the grotesque is sort of pointless when all things have sort of become the grotesque themselves. And so like, yeah, there's no audience, there's only performers.
I feel like in order to like reveal a grotesquerie, you have to like simultaneously know what is good.
Yeah,
like you have to have a acknowledgement of some sort of objective, like perfected qualia. This is
the source of the shitlib's pathogenic messianic like self-confidence.
I mean, I actually kind of think that, I don't know. I think that all forms of disgust are inherently right wing.
Okay, so yeah, that's okay. I see where you're going with that, and I kind of agree.
And so it is. There's a part of me that feels like no one who is interested in conspiracy, right? Like, being interested, like that's why the parapolitical stuff is so is interesting to me, because these are people who tend to be clinging to left-wing beliefs in an environment that really, really incentivizes being a reactionary.
Yeah, that's true. Well, when you listen to Eric, it's like almost like when you're listening to our buddy, and I'm on first name basis with him. I never got on. I don't know.
Yeah.
I still don't know who Gary was, but they don't know who Gary Allen is.
Who the fuck is Gary Allen?
Yeah. Well, where did I say that? Was that on Twitter?
That was on this show when we were reading a book by him.
But like anytime I like listening to it, it wasn't as bad with Wendy, but whenever I listen to the Parapolitics people, I just sort of think that's cute. You know, it's like you're not wrong, but that's cute.
Yeah. Anyway, one of the most uncanny aspects of JFK Dallas is the fact that so many of the usual suspects were amateur or marginal artists or involved with that quintessential modern enterprise of public relations. Phillips as amateur thespian, Hunt as subpar novelist, Lansdale as Wall Street ad man. Pursuing the Debordian logic of the integrated spectacle to the highest level would involve reconceptualizing the usual suspects as signs of the grotesque landscape, the quasi-competent lords of misrule of the post-reality era of governance by spectacle. Perhaps the most striking aspect of JFK Dallas and the high strangeness of the possible evidence generated within its wake is the half-smart, half-stupid nature of bizarre occurrences and weird coincidences and convergences. Don DeLillo employs this grotesque play with the absurd as the narrative foundation of his metaphysical thriller, Libra. An outstanding example of this, one that almost certainly originated with Phillips and his grotesque post-Guatemala crew of psyop pranksters, was the absurd pseudo-demonic farce of B2 number 933. As part of Zapata, Mario Zuniga, an anti-Castro Cuban pilot, flew an American-built B-26 bomber number 933 from the CIA base at Puerto Cabezas, Happy Valley, in Nicaragua to Miami International Airport in the opening hours of the invasion of Cuba, Saturday, April 15th. Zuniga's cover story was that he was a defector from the Cuban Air Force, claiming that there was a full-scale mutiny in the armed forces against communist rule. A number of pilots, including Zuniga, had attacked Cuban military airfields before seeking asylum in the U.S. At 6 a.m., Zuniga's statement claimed he had taken off from San Antonio de los Banos and flown over to Libertad, where he and other pilots dropped bombs and strafed planes with machine guns, taking fire from ground artillery. As he returned to strafe his own airfield at San Antonio, his co-conspirators attacked other Cuban airfields. As should have been predicted, Zuniga's story soon fell apart for the following someone should have known reasons. 1. Zuniga claimed a 2-hour flight time when Cuba was only 30 minutes away by air. 2. The difficult-to-explain away presence of anti-dust tape covering barrels of the plane's machine guns, which would have been removed if the guns had actually been fired. And 3, the nose of number 933 was made of metal, while those of the B-26s in the Cuban Air Force were made of plexiglass. And 4, the machine guns were mounted on the nose of number 933, while B-26s of the Cuban Air Force were mounted under the wings. To compound the absurdity even more, U.S. Ambassador Adlai Stevenson used photographs of Zuniga's plane to denounce the Cuban regime in the United Nations Security Council. As Phillips later wrote in his memoirs, The Night Watch, as I watched Stevenson defend the deceitful scheme, a chill moved through my body. What had we done? Adlai Stevenson had been taken in by a hoax. I believe that it is important to keep these aesthetic digressions in mind when considering perhaps the single most Byzantine element in the Oswald drama, the shadowy movements of Oswald to and from Mexico City during September and October of 1963. It is also the piece of absurd theater that offers the most compelling evidence of a higher level degree of CIA manipulation of the assassin.
Incredible.
Incredible. What part is incredible to you?
Just all of it. It just rolls. It's beautiful. It's actually good. It's good writing again now. I bet it's like drug writing though. Like this is like guy has to. I wonder if there is any connection. Did you look to see if there was a connection between him and Land?
Him and Land? No, there's none that is obvious.
Interesting.
Yeah, I mean, he might cite CCRU in some thing, but I don't,
he does here.
I don't believe so.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, but yeah, okay. So this is interesting. Huh.
Oswald in Mexico City. Mark Lane had recently reminded us of the centrality of the Mexico City CIA station to the agency's wider hemispheric operations. The newspapers were not bothersome in Mexico City, and the police authorities had long since been co-opted by the use of several methods. Select mid-level officers were fed secret intelligence about minor, semi-major criminal activities, permitting the favored to quickly solve open cases through what appeared to be brilliant investigative work. They rose through the ranks knowing that they owed their careers to the CIA. Those open to bribery were easily recruited, and the few important officials who were loyal to their own country were placed in situations, filmed sexual assignations as one device, so that their cooperation and silence was extorted. For those reasons, the CIA chose Mexico City rather than a city in the United States to make plans that directly involved the United States. Wonderful.
But who even is the United States?
Who the fuck is the United States?
Yeah, but it's like at this point, it's become totally porous. This is like it's again Joe Pesci. It's the what do your people have? And again, he's like, and Matt Damon's like the United States of America, and it's like, huh.
I'm just gonna say that I'm sure the CIA is no longer doing any of the things that it was just stated that they did in the 1960s.
Yeah.
Please do not. Please do not. Yeah. FedOps Gone Wild. Would you buy the DVD?
Yeah, I live the life.
$39.99. FedOps Gone Wild. The ideal parapolitical ambiance of Mexico City. Parapolitical ambiance, that would be a great one for New Orleans as well. Therefore, would automatically provide any CIA covert operation the two most necessary requirements for success: deniability and compartmentalization. And if JFK Dallas was indeed a false flag spectacle with Oswald as the pro-Castro gunman, then Mexico City would have been the place to mount the required counterintelligence operation, with Phillips, the thespian wannabe, the man to do it. Scott's argument on this point strikes me as conclusive. David Phillips does seem a likely candidate to have coordinated the stories coming out of Mexico City and Miami. For in the second half of 1963, he was cross-posted to both stations as chief of Cuba operations in Mexico City and as chief of PSYOPs, i.e. propaganda, in Miami. In fact, it is possible that David Phillips was held down 3 posts in 1963 and was doubling also as a member of the Special Affairs Staff Counterintelligence Staff. Special Affairs Staff Counterintelligence Staff. Interesting.
They're running out of names. It's getting redundant.
Oswald was reputedly in Mexico City from September 25th to October 3rd, 1963, making 5 separate visits to both the Soviet and Cuban embassies in an attempt to acquire a travel visa for both countries. That meant that if Oswald was in Mexico City and if he were involved in any intelligence activity, whether pro or anti-Castro, Phillips would have been either a player or he could have known about it. We have a real fucking chonker of a footnote here. What Oswald actually did during those 6 days is a puzzle. In fact, part of the puzzle is whether or not it was the real Oswald in Mexico City. In the end, the only proof that the real Oswald was inside the Cuban consulate were his photograph and signature on the visa application. For Fonzie's compelling critique of the evidence for Oswald's presence in Mexico City, let's see. A recurrent but tantalizing subtheme of the conspiracy literature of JFK Dallas is that U.S. intelligence had fabricated a second or double Oswald who was activated at strategically crucial moments for counterintelligence purposes. Pease identifies the ultimate control over all counterintelligence operations involving Oswald as James Jesus Angleton. Pease, let's see. My personal preference would be to situate operational control at a lower level within the CIA hierarchy. Hence, my preference for Tracy Barnes is a credible usual suspect. The most sophisticated and extensive discussion of this issue is Scott in deep politics too, generally. The obvious problem with this theory is in identifying the precise moment and circumstances in which Oswald became an item of interest to the intelligence agencies. Aberelli has tentatively suggested that the possible solution lies within Oswald's own early history of delinquency, the subject of the masterful first chapter of Don DeLillo's brilliant novel, Libra. In April 1953, reportedly following additional school absences, Oswald was sent to Youth House located on 12th Street between 1st and 2nd Avenue in Manhattan. Here he was placed under psychiatric observation for 3 weeks, from April 16th to May 7th, 1953. Oswald's forced stay at Youth House puts him uncomfortably close to a much more sinister institution, the Bordentown Reformatory. Boys sent to Youth House who were deemed incorrigible were routinely sent to nearby Bordentown Reformatory in New Jersey, a home away from home for what were then commonly called juvenile delinquents. There is no known evidence that Oswald went to Bordentown, but several physicians who worked at the reformatory also performed work at Youth House. The Bordentown facility is significant because during World War II and from 1951 to 1964, it was the site of secret CIA and U.S. Army behavior modification and mind control experiments, which were intended to both trigger and study a model psychosis characterized by visual and auditory hallucinations. Furthermore, during the Second World War, the Bordentown Reformatory was used by OSS, precursor to the CIA, for truth drug experiments. Following JFK Dallas on the 9th of December 1963, an article co-authored by Donald R. Flynn and Mike Pearl entitled New York Psychiatric Report Cited Oswald Violence appeared in the New York Journal American, opening with the following sentence. Holy shit, this footnote is 3 pages.
Yeah.
A 10-year-old psychiatric report on Lee Harvey Oswald emerged today as a startlingly accurate blueprint for precisely the kind of violence that erupted last November 22nd in the assassination of John F. Kennedy. The psychiatrist who examined the juvenile Oswald and who authored the report, Dr. Renatus Hartogs, was linked to, what is the Star Wars name? Was linked to a number of other psychiatrists who were involved in the extensive CIA mind control experimentation in the 1950s, including Operations Artichoke, Bluebird, and most importantly, MKUltra. These contacts included, but were not limited to, Dr. D. Ewan Cameron, Dr. Harold A. Abramson, and Dr. Milton Kurian. Abramson worked under West. And in 1965, Hartogs co-authored a book on Oswald suggestively entitled The Two Assassins, which argued on fairly scant evidence that Oswald fit the classic profile of the schizophrenic loner exactly. A possible additional factor at work here is that Oswald's half-brother, John Pick, was a corpsman in the U.S. Coast Guard, and from April 1952 to February 1953 was assigned to the Coast Guard's Port Security Unit at Ellis Island. This security unit, an outgrowth of the Espionage Act of 1950, was charged with identifying, investigating, and ridding New York Harbor, the Longshoremen's Union, and the maritime industry of communists and subversive elements.
Yeah, that was a lot.
That was a lot. I did not know about the Bordentown Reformatory. Had no idea about that before.
Most of this is new to me.
Yeah, had no idea about that.
I'm actually not that much of a JFK guy normally. Like, it's not something like, despite like all of the shit that I know about glowies is from my own personal experience, and like occasionally like the stories that they'll tell like touch on this, but I actually don't know a lot of the details. Yeah, that's a good one. That's not a footnote.
Sex Freakman says that's not a footnote. That's a yard note. Yes, very good. Oh my God. Okay. All right. Now we're going back to the the main body of the text. And what is so decidedly odd here is the memo of November 23rd, 1963, sent by J. Edgar Hoover to Chief of the Secret Services, James Rowley, a memo that constitutes one of the very few pieces of the paper trail of JFK Dallas. The Central Intelligence Agency advised that on October 1st, 1963, an extremely sensitive source had reported that an individual identifying himself as Lee Oswald contacted the Soviet embassy in Mexico City inquiring as to any messages. Special agents of this bureau, who had conversed with Oswald in Dallas, Texas, observed photographs of the individual referred to above and have listened to a recording of his voice. The CIA had wiretapped all of the telephone lines to the Russian embassy. These special agents are of the opinion that the above referenced individual was not Lee Harvey Oswald. Another powerful footnote. On the presence of Oswald's double in Mexico City at this time, see Newman, and on Oswald generally, someone pretending to be Oswald made a series of telephone calls between September 28th and October 1st, allegedly to and from the Cuban and Soviet consulates in Mexico City. An added complication here was the testimony of Silvia Tirado de Duran, the Cuban consular staff member who allegedly had an affair with Oswald during his stay in Mexico City. That's not in Libra, so it didn't happen. Let's see. The taped conversation in question was repeatedly a call that both Duran and Oswald made from within the Cuban consulate to the Soviet embassy on Saturday, September 28th. Yet Duran told Mexican authorities that Oswald had not returned to the consulate after Friday, September 27th. The CIA officer responsible for translating Duran's testimony in the original Mexican transcript was David Phillips. Even though fluent in Spanish, Phillips mistranslated Duran's remarks, changing he, Oswald, never called back to she, Duran, does not recall whether or not Oswald telephoned her at the consulate number on Saturday. Wow. Okay. For more on Oswald and Duran, see below in this chapter. Sidpick has argued that this tape is the single most important piece of evidence in JFK Dallas. The conspirators, probably members of William Harvey's staff, D, along with affiliates such as David Morales and Johnny Roselli, impersonated Oswald and perhaps Duran as well, not only as part of their false flag agenda, but also to convince CIA counterintelligence chief James Angleton that the Mexico City wiretapping operations had been penetrated by a Cuban double agent, and that the obviously fake voices were an attempt to provide the Americans with disinformation. The plan was that Angleton would fall for the trap and launch a full-scale mole hunt, looking for possible Castroite double agents within the anti-Castro network, which would inadvertently provide effective cover for the JFK Dallas crew. Wow. Okay. Wow. Wheels within wheels.
That's the way it works.
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah, a fractious group.
It's a list of ships It's a list of grotesque ships.
Yeah, I mean a fractious group. They are. The deep significance of the confusion over the identity and movements of Oswald was not lost on Fidel Castro, who made a remarkable series of comments to the U.S. Senate Assassinations Committee. You see, it was always very suspicious to me that a person who later appeared to be involved in Kennedy's death would have requested a visa from Cuba, because I said to myself, what would have happened had by any chance that man come from Cuba, visited Cuba, gone back to the United States, and then appeared involved in Kennedy's death? That would really have been a provocation, a giant provocation. That is why it has always been something, a very obscure thing, something suspicious, because I interpreted it as a deliberate attempt to link Cuba with Kennedy's death. In a similar manner, Escalante cast damning aspersions. This isn't really that remarkable a series of comments. That totally makes sense, right? Like that's like the, you know, if you're running a country, right? And in a similar manner,
I feel like we could run a country.
Yeah.
We just gotta pick,
Posters in control.
We got to pick the right one, and like it needs to be.
Honestly, Cuba's like the perfect size for a country.
It's like America's Ireland.
It's such a good sized country. Yeah. In a similar manner, Escalante cast damning aspersions upon a series of obviously fake letters allegedly sent to Oswald from Cuba in the days immediately following the assassination. Clear signs, in his view, of an absurdly incompetent attempt at a frame. The alleged authors of the epistles included Pedro Charles, Miguel Galvan Lopez, who conveniently identified himself as ex-captain of the rebel army, and Mario del Rosario Molina. The clumsiness of the fabrications readily puts one in mind of Zapata's farcical B-62, number 933. But perhaps the single most intriguing piece of evidence is provided by Alpha 66 director Anthony Vecchiana, who claimed that on February 1st, 1964, an apparent attempt to make Oswald frame up stick, he was approached by his ubiquitous CIA controller, Maurice Bishop, and asked to provide additional cover for Oswald's activities in Mexico City. At the time, there were newspaper stories about Oswald having met with a Cuban couple in Mexico City. Vecchiana recalls these stories reported that the wife spoke excellent English. Bishop said that he knew that Vecchiana had a cousin, Guillermo Ruiz, in Castro's intelligence service. Fonzie does not appear to make much of this rather remarkable fact, who then happened to be stationed in Mexico City. Ruiz's wife, coincidentally, spoke excellent English. Bishop asked Vecchiana to try to get in touch with Ruiz and offer him a large amount of money if Ruiz would say that it was he and his wife who had met Oswald.
Who is the wife?
What?
Who is the wife?
Irrelevant.
Is it not the woman that
Duran?
Is not the Leon woman?
No.
Okay.
No, that would be no. The vital question at this point is, of course, was Maurice Bishop the cover name for David Phillips? The classic and most extensive statement of the case for Phillips as Bishop is the one offered by Gaten Fonzie in his monumental The Last Investigation. Kind of a wild thing to call it, right? Let's see. The case officer, Ross Crozier, the CIA case officer who handled the DRE for Phillips from 1960 to 1962, initially claimed that Phillips used that alias, but later admitted to making an error. However, not all conspiracy investigators are convinced. Scott, for one, finds Vecchiana unreliable and the character of Bishop a red herring. Nonetheless, Scott clearly assigns Phillips ultimate responsibility for the double Oswald scenario that appears to have been enacted in Mexico City. So that even if Oswald and Vecchiana was not being handled by Phillips as Bishop, he was still being manipulated by Phillips via counterintelligence operations being run out of the Mexico City station. The story becomes even more complicated, but equally more seductive if I take into account Vecchiana's second post-JFK Dallas anecdote concerning Bishop. In 1967, Phillips was promoted to chief of the Cuban operations group of the CIA's Western Hemisphere Division, responsible for all agency anti-communist actions run throughout Central and South America. According to Vecchiana, in 1971, Bishop, with the assistance of anti-Castro Cuban personnel, organized an aborted assassination attempt against Castro while on a state visit to Chile, one that bore an uncanny resemblance to a typical JFK Dallas conspiracy narratives. Bishop told me, Vecchiana says, that it was an opportunity to make it appear that the anti-Castro Cubans killed Castro without American involvement. According to Vecchiana, the conspirators planted phony documents so that if the two who were going to assassinate Castro were caught and killed, the trail would lead to the Russian agents in Caracas. It was an elaborate scheme. False surveillance reports were slipped into the files of Venezuelan secret police to indicate that the Cuban assassins had been seen meeting with Russian agents. Also in the files were fake passports, diaries, and notes, which would be planted in one of the assassin's hotel rooms to prove his contacts with the agents. But the most damaging evidence they concocted was the photograph showing what appeared to be one of the assassins leaning into a car window, talking with one of the agents. The photo was actually of another Cuban who closely resembled the assassin. As instructed, this double stopped the Russian agent's car as he left his home one morning, leaned in, and asked him for a match. A telephoto shot was taken of this encounter. Shocking that you go to a Russian spy and lean into their car and don't get a face full of gun.
Well, there's all kinds of things that could be going on.
Mm.
None of them are good.
Yeah. If this story is true, the implication for JFK Dallas as a spectacular, deep event are obvious. Both of the assassins, who really were the actual shooters, had a complex web of disinformation and black propaganda woven around them without their apparent knowledge or participation. Even more intriguing is the reason why the plot failed. Both assassins pulled out at the last moment, having developed a subplot based on the assumption that the shooters would be immediately caught and killed. Smart. An additional germane fact, although not conclusive in itself, is that from 1971 to 1973, Phillips was responsible for conducting all covert or Track 2 actions against the Allende government in Chile, culminating in the coup d'etat of September 11, 1973, and the apparent murder of President Allende. Because of his spectacular success with Track 2, Phillips was promoted to director of the Western Hemisphere Division of the CIA in June 1973. Wow. So he just, so how many governments has this guy specifically done? 2, at least? At least 2?
I mean, you got to understand the Caribbean is like the tutorial. It's like the live field training test for the CIA. They're always doing shit. This is why everybody in Latin America hates us.
Yeah.
We're still doing it. We still do it. It's based, but like we
right
just
now,
literally just did it. Like we're like bailing out Argentina, blowing up Venezuelan boats for little or no reason, and then hanging the Colombian president out to dry. And that was just this month. You know, like it's
Thank God we're presently not trying to topple El Salvador.
Yeah.
I do like El Salvador. I feel like he's probably going to go immediately if a Democrat gets into the White House. It's kind of crazy, but it is what it is.
I would totally side Senor El Presidente, if you're listening, I would very much appreciate an El Salvadoran passport.
You need a job. You need a job in El Salvador.
I need somewhere. I read a dispatch from the El Salvadoran government that said they're paying artists and philosophers. And
That's true.
And they're giving them passports. And
well, you're going to have to go fill out the application, bud.
So true. There was not an online fill out.
Man. Let's see. Oh yeah, Penultimo will handle it. He's our contact in El Salvador. He's probably got a direct line to Bukele. There's like 300 people in El Salvador who aren't in prison.
Is he really in El Salvador? That's based.
Yeah, Penultimo is a Salvadorian.
Based as fuck.
Juxtaposing Phillips with Oswald and tentatively identifying Phillips as Bishop allows me to arrive at 2 conclusions about JFK Dallas. The first is that Phillips Bishop is an exemplary example of the awkward phrasing of the criminal sovereign. Indeed, Phillips appears to have been very much a cowboy within the Yankee paragon of the agency. Apart from the fact that cowboy is a CIA parlance for an experienced covert operator, Phillips was a literal cowboy as well as a figurative one, having been born in Fort Worth, Texas, far from the spawning grounds of the Eastern establishment. He also, little known fact, wasps reproduce by spawning like salmon.
This is true, but it's this is the most base kind of guy that has ever lived, by the way. This is like absolutely one of the most incredible bios I've ever heard.
Penultimo says the artist and philosopher's salary is piss poor, but you can make a killing grifting crypto bros.
I want to be I need an institute.
Hey man, get that Salvadorian sinecure.
Yeah.
They don't care about the Confederate stuff.
It's got 2 years on it.
Does El Salvador count as the deep South?
It's absolutely within the golden circle. And like the thing that would be really cool about that is if your prediction holds out, we could do this, we could keep doing the show, and theoretically I could be doing LMD live from the U.S. coup against the El Salvadoran regime.
Amazing. That's true. Yeah, I mean, hell, we can get on actual Salvadorian radio. That'd be great. I'm really starting to come around on this idea. I think you should do it.
Yeah.
Juxtaposing Phillips with Oswald and tentatively identifying Phillips as bishop. Eastern establishment. He also, along with many of the other officers involved with the Cuba project, very much fit the character profile of a criminal sovereign, provided, of course, that I am actually able to assume the existence of such a thing. Fonzie himself was in no doubt concerning Phillips' personal proclivity for a spectacular power. One retired CIA officer who still prefers anonymity was chief of collections in covert actions when Phillips was on the Cuban desk. There wasn't a period when I could sign off on a cable from him, he said. I usually had to send them back for some glaring technical errors. He was an incredibly sloppy officer, but he had a keen sense of public relations. Phillips was a grandstander. He was one of those guys who wanted to run countries in his own freewheeling style. We had a lot of guys like that. Howard Hunt was another fellow cut precisely from the same cloth as David Phillips. Man, they just like me for real. They were romantic adventurers. They couldn't possibly subject themselves to the kind of dry, arid, dispassionate anonymity you have to have if you're going to be good in espionage. Phillips was the supreme adventurer, one of a crowd of grandstanders who got into this goddamn CIA, and once they got in, they found out that America, the grandstanding country, they could actually play to the galleries, and they got away with it. One of the problems with the Central Intelligence Agency is that it operates with two sets of books, Yankee and Cowboy. It also allows men like David Phillips, who it could not endure otherwise, to get into positions where they can't be dropped off the line. Now, once you reach a certain point, you can do almost no wrong because you've got too much guilty knowledge inside your head. Let's see. There is a okay, that's later. My second conclusion is that the concept of Dealey Plaza as an open-air stage for the theater of the false flag is proven by the person of Phillips himself. It is not merely the case that Phillips happened to be a conspirator who engineered a deep event as a false flag. Rather, the truth of Dealey Plaza is as the central component of a strategy of tension operation would actively require the presence of Phillips or someone very much like him operating within and through the counterintelligence divisions of either the CIA or some parts of the myriad networks of military intelligence. I have suspected in the footnote, I have suspected for quite a while, but have so far been unable to prove that the background role of military intelligence, including the Defense Intelligence Agency within JFK Dallas. I feel it likely that many of the usual suspects from the CIA may very well have constructed within the media as cutouts for DIA operatives. It is also possible that military intelligence may solve the problem of Maurice Bishop, that Vecchiano was misled into thinking that his contact officer was within the CIA and not within the DIA and or Army intelligence. Apparently, Maurice Bishop was an alias used by a number of different CIA case officers. To the best of my knowledge, Bill Simpich's recently published online book, State Secrets, does the best job in discussing the participation of military intelligence services in the Cuba project.
I kind of want to read that book.
Yeah, right.
Speaking of, that's a lot of dense prose. And I also point out that first of all, we have acquired a bot.
We totally have.
I think that's the first time I've ever seen a bot.
Yeah, we got bot comments. Yeah,
and then second, Randall Sugar says, "I'm waiting for a literal schizo to get cited in this book." First of all, it's probably already happened, and second of all, this is just the first chapter.
Yeah. This is, well, it's the second chapter technically, but yeah.
Right. This is there are three, and I'm assuming the coverage is going to be escalating, because one of the interesting things that works is the further forward in time you go, the more granular the documentation is, and so there's even way more schizo shit going on.
Yeah, that's right. Randall Shirker, brah, these footnotes are gonna kill me. Man, the footnotes in this one are the footnotes in this one are amazing. These footnotes are just like if the footnote is like more than a page, the footnote is easily a book, right? Like it's a topic that's interesting enough to be a fucking book. The footnotes will get longer until morale improves, says Sex Freakman in the chat. I think that, eventually we're getting footnotes that are longer than that are multiple pages long. So I think it's just going to slowly become longer and longer. Eventually the footnotes will have their own footnotes. The last chapter of this book is basically House of Leaves. Just with the footnotes.
I've told you, I was on a space with IN 1776 the other day, and we were talking about the hypertext, but there was like a really conservative guy on there, so I didn't want to offend him. I didn't want to get into some of the. I like this show because I could get into the really strange stuff, but we were talking about some of this stuff remarkable, and I was talking about it last week when I was referring to the physical problem of the book itself. That is a limitation of the book. It's of the physical medium of book. There's never been a solution for footnoting a footnote.
I mean, hypertext. Yeah, hypertext is correct. Actually, I think that some of the best footnotes and references that have been used in a printed book are, if you have seen a copy of any of Passage Press's books, they use QR codes in their footnotes.
What?
I mean, so for example, in Unqualified Reservations, their publication of the Curtis Yarvin blog, they use QR codes to link to the things that he is referencing as he goes through.
That's pretty cool, actually.
Yeah, and that is a direct application. I mean, they're doing it because he was using hypertext when he wrote it. So, and it is a very clean way of doing it. It looks nice, but this is a lot more fun. Yeah. So, Randall Shirker says, I bought Unqualified Reservations and Xenosystems from them. Very nice books. Yes, that is true. I do have the OG printing of Xenosystems as well. But I bought theirs.
The only Nick Land physical book I have is Thirst for Annihilation.
Very nice.
Yeah.
OG. Further, the Dallas Spectacle as counterintelligence operation obviates the need to positively establish that Oswald was not the lone gunman of the Warren Commission. Both the operational and legal definition of conspiracy can be established even if Oswald was the sole shooter. The Dallas script did not position Lee Oswald as a lone nut acting entirely on his own initiative. The plot was intended to present the assassination as a conspiracy, one that would lead directly to Fidel Castro and Castro intelligence organizations operating within the United States. The plotters spent considerable effort associating Lee Oswald with purported Castro agents and positioning him as being paid by Castro in the killing of President Kennedy. This script did not present Oswald as a devout Castro activist and revolutionary, as might have been anticipated from the New Orleans FPCC activities of Oswald, but rather as a nut or an unstable gun for hire. That was the characterization presented to Sylvia Odio on September 26th or 27th, 1963.
Why are these
Oswald was presented as someone dangerous, emotional, and unpredictable. Sylvia Odio, by the way, is the one who said Leon.
Yeah, okay, but how are these two things mutually exclusive? I mean, they're not. He's a spook. So he's crazy on one hand, but capable of holding it together for incredibly strange reasons and strange lengths of time, He's a
Yeah,
spook.
that's
Like,
true.
everything that I'm hearing points towards he's a much more sophisticated spook than we're giving him credit for.
Fair enough. I think that the only point that Wilson is making here is that the Dallas spectacle as counterintelligence operation, like, he means that he doesn't have to. It means that, like, all he's trying to prove is conspiracy, right?
Yeah.
And his definition of conspiracy literally just means if there's more, wherever two are gathered, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah. What matters was the clandestine network operating around him. He's saying that he can, like, this can still be that operation, and Oswald could have been the only person to fire a gun. That's what he's saying.
Okay. Yeah.
Like,
So, like, I think it's just,
which is totally fine. Yeah, that's totally fine. There's, there obviously is more than one bullet, but that doesn't mean, he probably could have gotten 2 shots off or something. It doesn't really make any sense that the Warren Commission said that there was 1 bullet, just because obviously 1 bullet can only be fired by 1 person. So, what matters was the clandestine network operating around him. The plotters were presenting Oswald as a paid Castro agent associating with Castro operatives. They had 1 sacrificial patsy, but no shortage of shooters. Beyond any other consideration, they had to ensure that John Kennedy died. Their original concept seems to have included multiple officials as targets, perhaps explaining the shots to Governor John Connally. There was no reason for them to limit the number of shots or shooters. Well, there's plenty of reasons to limit the number of shooters. Obviously, if you have one, if you prepared 1 patsy, then yeah. On the basis of my minimalist conspiracy scenario, then, premised upon the public staging of the false flag, the enormous network of mobsters, anti-Castro Cubans, and right-wing political activists that Kaiser outlines can be restricted to the following key suspects: David Atlee Phillips, Tracy Barnes, Antonio Vecchiana, George D. Morenschild, Guy Bannister, and, in the not improbable but as yet unproven recruitment of 1 or more supplemental or even substitute shooters for Oswald, David Morales. And if we are able to not implausibly expand the covert parapolitical parameters of JFK Dallas to include multiple shooters, then Oswald's network would include the Cuban snipers, Eladio de Valle Gutierrez, Sandalio Herminio Diaz Garcia, and Nestor Izquierdo. In order to make out a conspiracy, it is not necessary, therefore, to refute any of the Oswald shot the president forensic evidence. I need merely to recontextualize it. Right, which is, what I said a little bit earlier. Let's see. Sex Freakman says, you start covering other books on the show, completely different topics, even start a new series, and then one day you go, and all that concludes the second to last footnote of Spectacle of the False Flag. Yes, we're the rest of our lives is footnotes to this book. That's just how it goes. He's gonna like just write a fiction novella in one of these footnotes eventually. Addendum to Oswald in Mexico City. Philo communists twisting the night away. He doesn't. He's not gonna get a will dog. But that is close to Wendog level. Let's see here.
She remains undefeated.
She remains undefeated. So true. Avalanche of Decay. It is necessary, however, to discuss in some detail one of the most troubling. Actually, Avalanche of Decay was McVeigh originally said it, but she snuck it in wherever she could. It is necessary, however, to discuss in some detail one of the most troubling aspects of Oswald's supposed trip to Mexico City. In the second half of 1969, Charles William Thomas, an official of the U.S. Embassy in Mexico City throughout the 1960s, who was also a CIA plant within the State Department, Thomas committed suicide in April 1971. Interesting. Um, let's see. Submitted a series of reports investigation of Lee Harvey Oswald in Mexico, along with extensive attached memoranda to Secretary of State William Rogers. The core of these reports concerned Elena Guerrero de Paz, the former wife of the poet Octavio Paz, and an important writer in her own right, who claimed on several occasions to have seen Oswald along with two unidentified gringos at a twist party in Mexico City sometime in late September 1963.
Holy based.
As Morley puts it, the chain of communication was elaborate and suspicious. Garro told her friend, the Costa Rican poet Eunice Odio, who told CIA asset codenamed Tichborne, who told the director of covert action for the CIA stationed in Mexico City, who then told station chief Winston Scott. Scott then received, hold on. Scott then received independent verification of the story from June Cobb, a CIA informant, and a friend received independent confirmation of Garro's story from June Cobb. Cobb was a highly valued CIA asset who specialized in penetration operations against the Fair Play for Cuba Committee, Oswald's old outfit, through seduction. Honeypot. Her main sponsor within the CIA was David Phillips. Wow.
Dude.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
So just based on what you know about me, what portion of that last section do you think I zeroed in on?
Penetration operations?
No. You gotta think more Sandbatchian. The Costa Rican poet Eunice Odio.
Yeah, okay.
And I am looking at this bitch now, and whoa.
We're looking up photos of Eunice Odio.
Oh man, this is like, dude.
She kind of looked like Betty Page.
Dude,
yeah,
that woman would fuck my life up.
Absolutely true. Anyway, she commencing penetration operations.
Hold on, she apparently wrote an extended surrealist epic called The Fire's Journey.
I guess you're going to be writing about that on your Substack soon. All right. The party was allegedly held at the home of Garro's cousin, Ruben Duran, who was married to Sylvia Tirado Duran, a receptionist at the Cuban consulate in Mexico City and allegedly Oswald's mistress during his visit. Duran only confessed to a sexual tryst with Oswald following the application of enhanced interrogation techniques by Mexican police following her arrest on November 23rd, 1963. Interestingly, Duran has always described Oswald as both short and blonde, while Oswald was fairly tall, 5'9". Short kings respected. Short king respecter, fairly tall, 5'9", and brown haired. The original transcript of Duran's interrogation clearly refutes her relationship with Oswald, as well as his presence in the Cuban consulate on Saturday, the 28th of September. As John Newman uncategorically concludes, the CIA and the Mexican government were the source of this bogus story. Also of note was that Duran's description of Oswald as blonde and short was mysteriously ignored by the Warren Commission. So mysterious that the Warren Commission would ignore evidence and make stuff up when they wanted it to exist. According to Garro, most of the guests at the party were communists or philo-communists, including the Cuban consul Eusebio Azcue, General Clark Flores of the Mexican Olympic Committee, the pro-Castro writer Emilio Carballido, and Sylvia Duran herself. She worked at the Cuban consulate. Of course, she was a fucking communist. Like, what do you expect? Along with the three Americans. At the party, the man Garro assumes was Oswald, wore a black sweater, maybe the same black sweater he wore in Dallas when he was shot by Jack Ruby. He tended to be silent and stared a lot at the floor. Oh, boy. He's like standing in the corner. They don't know I'm going to kill JFK, and everyone's dancing. We all know you're going to kill JFK.
Yeah.
Let's see. Of his two young American companions, one was very tall and slender and had long blonde hair which hung across his forehead. He had a gaunt face and a rather long protruding chin. The other was also rather tall and had short light brown hair, but had no real distinguishing characteristics. All three were obviously Americans and did not dance or mix with the other people. The three were evidently friends because Garrow saw them by chance the next day walking down the street together. Insurgentes Avenue, specifically. Elsewhere, in his report on Garrow's story, Thomas states that Garrow also claimed that on another occasion, sometime either before or after the late September twist party with Oswald, she attended another party that included Carbolito, that's what it is, as Cue and tantalizingly unidentified Latin American man with red hair. Unusual.
They're out there.
One of the minor mysteries of JFK Dallas is that reports of a Negro with frizzy red hair appear periodically throughout the saga. He figures prominently in a bizarre incident involving Gilberto Alvarado, a CIA asset and informant for the CIA-backed Nicaraguan intelligence service. On November 25th, Alvarado contacted the U.S. Embassy in Mexico City, claiming that he had personally witnessed Oswald inside the Cuban embassy receiving a payment of $6,500 US from a Negro with red hair. Contaminating any possible value of this story was the fact that Alvarado falsely identified himself as a radical leftist and a member of a pro-Castro Nicaraguan guerrilla outfit, the Frente de Liberación Nacional. Alvardo's most enthusiastic supporter was David Phillips. Classic David Phillips.
Emilio Carbolito or whatever was a gay Mexican.
Carbolito. Why do you think that?
I just looked him up.
You just like gay Mexican.
Gay Mexican playwright.
Lots of playwrights.
Yep, lots of them.
Reputedly, Carbolito and Escue, along with a few others, got into a heated discussion on that occasion about President Kennedy, and they came to the conclusion that the only solution was to kill him. Okay, fair enough.
It's just.
Oh my God, Sex Freakman in chat. Sex Freakman, a Negro with red hair, the only person you have to call a ginger with a soft A.
Ginger, damn.
So good. This remarkable outburst of undiplomatic language occurring in the presence of numerous witnesses bears more than a passing similarity to Oswald's own equally spectacular announcement. During his visit to the Cuban embassy on September 27th, Oswald allegedly shrieked out his intent to murder JFK because apparently Kennedy's trade embargo with Cuba was preventing Oswald from obtaining a visa to travel to Havana. Wow. The first murder of convenience. Yeah, definitely not the first. Let's see. Footnote. There is enormous controversy over this alleged event. The ultimate source of the information was, remarkably enough, Fidel Castro himself. The Cuban, amazing. The Cuban dictator's words had been relayed to the FBI from a confidential bureau informant. According to the informant, Castro had repeatedly been overheard in Havana talking about what his diplomats in Mexico City had known about Oswald. Our people in Mexico gave us the details in a full report of how he acted when he came to Mexico, Castro was quoted as saying. Oswald stormed into the embassy, demanded the visa, and when it was refused him, headed out saying, "I'm going to kill Kennedy for this."
Damn.
Castro was quoted as saying, as Simpich has pointed out, not the least striking element of this story is that Oswald apparently went to the Cuban embassy to demand a visa when he should have gone to the consulate. The fact that no embassy staff member pointed this out to him speaks volumes. Let's see. The genealogy of paradoxically, one can argue that the greater number of falsehoods in the story, the greater potential evidentiary importance. Interesting. All right. Complicating things even further, Thomas claimed that Garrow said that Carbolito. Actually, this time it's spelled Carbolito. Anyway, is known as a Castro agent in Mexico. He had been to Red China, the Soviet Union, and many times to Cuba. Garrow never recanted her story. During Kennedy's visit to Mexico City in November 1964, Garrow was among those trying to pass information about Oswald to Kennedy during his stay. Wow, just spooking on the spook, man. Oswald could not get a break. Poor guy.
No, I mean, he doesn't seem to have ever slept. Like that's one of those things. Like how this dude was 24 when all this happened. So he's 24 when he dies. So like this is all happening in a blinding pace.
Wow. Lee Harvey Oswald shot an American president and was then assassinated by Jack Ruby by the age of 24. What have you done? What have you done? Huh? Audience members, what have you done?
Right. I don't know how old Jack Ruby was either. He wasn't that old.
No, he was old.
Oh,
yeah.
was he?
Yeah. This bizarre event does have to be dealt with, for if true, it presents compelling prima facie evidence that Oswald was either recruited as an assassin by representatives of the Cuban government in Mexico City, or at the very least, was operating under the influence of these Cuban diplomats and pro-Castro Mexicans in the mistaken assumption that killing Kennedy would result in his being granted a visa to Cuba, a scenario which, as a point of law, does meet the definition of criminal conspiracy. Well, fair enough. The evidence, however, indicates that Garrow's story is either bogus or, more ominously, the result of yet another covert act of disinformation. The U.S. Embassy's legal attaché and FBI liaison, Nathan Ferris, conducted the preliminary investigation of Garrow's claims after she approached the U.S. Embassy soon after Dealey Plaza and rejected her story, noting that someone who was at the first party had stated that there were no Americans there. The general consensus among JFK Dallas investigators is that the FBI report effectively discredited Garrow's story. In 1977, Thomas Mann, the U.S. ambassador to Mexico in 1963, approached staff members of the HSCA and informed them that Secretary of State Dean Rusk had personally ordered him to terminate any investigation in Mexico City that would confirm or refute rumors of Cuban involvement in the assassination. He also speculated at the time that Sylvia Duran was a CIA asset. Okay, so this is now two sides of the government fighting each other.
Yeah.
So Dean Rusk is like, we are absolutely not invading Cuba, and we need to make sure. Yeah.
This is the dual state. This is the Yankee cowboy thing.
You're right. Like we are absolutely not going to invade Cuba.
This book is interesting. I hate it in a way that I loved Wendy's book, but it's also good enough that I'm like actually writing history again, which is so strange. I never thought I would do this again.
I'm digging this book. You know, you have
I hate it.
You have to unpack several. You have to unpack the Marxism sometimes. But overall good. Like,
to be clear, Eric, if I ever meet you, we're gonna fight. But that you should take that as a compliment, because I didn't even remember Gary Allen's name.
Fight on sight. Who the fuck is Gary Allen? Anyway. Oscar Contreras, a law student at Mexico City's National Autonomous University in 1963, claimed to have met with Oswald on campus and agreed to help him obtain a Cuban visa. However, in June 2013, in conversation with investigative journalist Philip Shannon, Contreras claimed to have later seen Oswald at a distance during a reception in the Cuban embassy, but did not approach him because of warnings from Cuban friends that he might be some sort of CIA plant. This fits well with Hancock's own estimation of the affair. Oswald's own activities in Mexico City can best be interpreted as an extension of his FPCC propaganda role, with the possible enhancement as a test of whether he could establish himself as in an anti-American role with the Cuban embassy. Finally, Thomas himself makes clear in his own report to Rogers that some of the people appearing in the Elena Garro scenario may well be agents of the CIA. In the alternative, even if we were to accept the story as true, there is still considerable internal evidence of a CIA frame of Oswald, consistent with the false flag. It is definitely possible that Emilio Carbadillo was a CIA double agent following JFK Dallas. Why is it this one so hard for me? Like, I never have trouble like this. Carbolito.
I don't know how to say that one.
Approximately 1 year in Cuba, and when he returned to the U.S. in September 1965 via Mexico, although he was a known leftist, he got a job teaching at Rutgers. Oh, that's not fucking. That's not. I mean, there are people who were literally arrested. I mean, whether underground, right?
That's where Eugene Genovese was teaching, and
yeah,
he was still a communist then.
Yeah. Let's see. Footnote here. Emilio Carballito, according to CIA and FBI files generated in 1966, entered the U.S. on September 21st, 1965. A 1966 FBI document reports that Carballito had a number of ties that the Bureau viewed as Marxist and communist, said information forwarded confidentially to the U.S. State Department.
I mean, he was a gay playwright, gay Mexican playwright. Like,
yeah.
Of course he was.
Yeah.
Of course he was a communist.
He got a job teaching at Rutgers University through Dr. Jose Vasquez Amaral, who was formerly with the Rockefeller Foundation, the Council on Foreign Relations.
There we go.
A known CIA affiliate and front. If Carballito was a mole, this could provide evidence for an alternative theory that occasionally appears within the conspiracy literature, that the Marxist Oswald was recruited by anti-Castro double agents posing as pro-Castro operatives. In a less complicated narrative, however, he could simply be one of the CIA sources for the frame. Of particular interest, therefore, is the utterly uncanny history of a strong candidate for the possibly non-fictitious second American at the Twist Party, for whom Garrow provided a near-perfect description of Thomas Eli Davis III. Let's see. Davis appears to have been both a CIA asset, and informant for the Federal Bureau of Narcotics. Aberelli speculates that Davis may have been subjected to MK-Ultra mind control experiments at the CIA Front Lafayette Clinic during his internment there from July 16 to October 1st, 1958. A preoccupation with MK-Ultra is one of the signature characteristics of Albarelli's work. Hey, do not discount a fucking preoccupation with MK-Ultra. Do not discount it. MK-Ultra is the story of like social control in the 20th century.
Absolutely.
That is it.
You know, it is. It's like MK-Ultra is the most important and also worst discussed event of the 20th century.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, I mean this is a conspiracy theory like as a frame as a psyop works better with MK-Ultra than anything else because it's so outrageous that people like don't believe it.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
Even when it's like rigorously documented.
Well, or they don't believe it, or they don't really see the boundaries of it, or it turns into a story instead of an ongoing process, which it absolutely is still around. You know. Oh, you mean it's not over? It's not. You mean a canceled government program doesn't mean they're doing it even harder now? Yeah.
Yeah. So let's see here. He also seems to have participated in at least some of Jack Ruby's gun running shipments to Cuba. In May 1963, in Downey, California, Davis attempted to recruit an outfit of American soldier of fortune types for a mercenary expedition to Haiti by placing an advertisement in the Los Angeles Times. Amazing. Significantly, Davis's unspectacular recruiting effort took place simultaneously with the far more successful efforts of anti-Castro paramilitary Loren Hall. Hall, surely not coincidentally, was also recruiting for what was most likely the same operation. Indeed, there is serious speculation, according to one former CIA operative, that Davis's Los Angeles operation was deliberately slipshod and high profile by design so as to throw off FBI investigators from Hall's concurrent recruitment activities. Said the same official who declined to be named in this book, it is a common ploy with the CIA. Sometimes there can be 3 or 4 operations in play at one time, but only one is actually fully planned and intended to go forward. It is similar to sophisticated drug traffickers sending out 3 or 4 large shipments of drugs with the objective that only one shipment will actually make it to its intended destination. We can also link both Davis and Hall with that nameless black guy with red hair. After Oswald's death, the address 1318 and a half Garfield, Norman, Oklahoma, was found in his address book. Apparently, both Davis and Hall lived briefly in Norman, Oklahoma prior to the assassination. As for the residents of 1318 and a half itself, they consisted of several white teenagers along with one African youth. Albarelli writes, additionally, the very intriguing is that at least 2 elderly residents of the neighborhood, not wanting to get involved in any way with anything to do with the Oswald character, reported that the black man that lived with the group at the address stood out some because he had reddish hair. Wild. I've never heard of the black guy with red hair. Have not heard of that.
Like, you pretty much only see.
No, I mean in relation to this.
Oh, okay. Well, I mean, there's it's one of those things. It's so unusual that it becomes relevant, and it's like, how many of those can there be?
Yeah, right. It should come as perhaps no surprise that Georges de Mohrenschildt conducted a series of Haiti-based oil and geological business ventures, some of which, according to at least 2 former U.S. State Department officials, involved the technical in-country Haiti services of Thomas Eli Davis III, as well as 2 or 3 other American soldier of fortune types who were in and out of Haiti, Guatemala, Panama, and the Dominican Republic on a regular basis. The reader might be interested to know that Davis died in September 1973 in an abandoned Texas quarry while allegedly attempting to steal copper. He was electrocuted when he cut through a high power line. What the fuck? What a
way to go.
That doesn't seem, well, I mean, that obviously seems like not a thing, right?
Yeah, it's like, that didn't happen. Like, yeah.
That guy got killed. In other words, not what?
I was just sitting there thinking about it. I'm like, yeah, there's no. I mean, I'm willing to brook a lot of zany shit.
Sex Freakman in the chat says he went to Gypsy Valhalla. That's what happens if you die while stealing copper.
Oh my god! Damn.
Oh my god.
That's high quality racism.
High quality peak, absolutely peak S tier. In other words, not 3 left-wing defectors at the twist party, but 3 right-wing infiltrators. See, he keeps reframing the obvious communists as right-wing infiltrators.
Right.
In the end, there are 3 ways to interpret Oswald's bizarre journey through the grotesque parapolitical landscape of Mexico City. 1, that the entire story was a wholesale fabrication of the CIA that doubled as both a key component of the false flag operation as well as one part of a wider cover-up, most likely coordinated by either David Lee Phillips and or CIA Station Chief Winston Scott. Or 2, Oswald was in Mexico City with or without 2 gringo companions, but deliberately acted in an irrational and highly theatrical manner, whether under operational control or not. Or that 3, that Oswald himself was never in Mexico City, but 1 or more imposters were, with or without 2 gringo companions, who were under orders to engage in a series of spectacular performances. In all 3 scenarios, the presence of clandestine agency is undeniable. Very true.
Which one of the 3 do you think it is?
I think Oswald was probably I think Oswald was in Mexico City at least one time, because he goes there one time in Don DeLillo's Libra, which is the authoritative document.
There's the authoritative text. See, I don't think he was ever in New. I think that the character that was fingered as the character who was fingered as Leon was Lee Harvey Oswald. Where I'm at here.
Okay.
And like, which to my mind, yeah, okay. But there needs, for some reason, we need Oswald to have been in Mexico City, and boom, imposters. They don't know what gringos look like.
We all look the same.
No.
True. All right. Oswald as nomad. If Oswald, the central nomadic actor of the spectacle of JFK Dallas, only three things may be said with certainty. The first is that he was clearly a person of interest to U.S. intelligence agencies, the CIA, FBI, and Defense Intelligence Agency, and was probably actively employed by them, either as a paid informant for the FBI and or a paid asset by the CIA or DIA. Dangle, provocateur, infiltrator, fake defector, cutout, etc. The fusion of the CIA and FBI anti-Cuban counterintelligence operations in December 1962 with AM Santa makes bright line distinction here essentially useless. Fair. The second is that there was a genuinely strange covert operation event of some unspecified kind involving Oswald or Oswalds in Mexico City from the 20th of September to the 3rd of October 1963. Providing direct evidence that either Oswald's person, direct participation, and or identity, indirect participation, the second Oswald, was manipulated on multiple occasions by either the CIA and or military intelligence. The third is that he was involved in some manner with the very public assassination of JFK in Dallas on November 2nd, 1963. Determining the nature of the spectacle of Dealey Plaza ultimately hinges on the maddeningly nebulous third certainty. As Dallas Police Chief Jesse Curry said, "We don't have any proof that Oswald fired the rifle. No one has been able to put him in that building with a rifle in his hand." The problem for the conspiracy theorists is that there is absolutely nothing that puts the Mannlicher Carcano into anybody else's hands, an evidentiary obstacle that has proven insurmountable over the years. There is currently no direct evidence that would allow us to insert the CIA or military intelligence into Dealey Plaza. 1 and 2 can be proven and placed together to form a plausible and discernible deep background to the spectacle. The difficulty is that the move from 1 and 2 to 3 skill requires a deductive inference or conjectural leap of some kind. There is no direct evidence that any of this formed part of an assassination conspiracy. Oswald, real or fake, could have been embedded within a plethora of anti-Castro espionage activities, none of which bore any direct connection to Dealey Plaza. Here, a wholly synchronous convergence among separate CIA operations involving a fake defection to Cuba by an agency-run Oswald and the presidential execution in Dallas emerges as an undeniable possibility, much of what has become known in common parlance as the cover-up. May have been more about deniability rather than suppression. The systematic concealment or destruction of evidence of knowledge of Oswald by national security agencies in reaction to a massive lapse of national security, the system-wide failure to detect and monitor an objective threat to the chief executive, coupled with the need to maintain the integrity of intelligence and counterintelligence operations, both domestic and foreign, e.g. Mexico City, in the face of judicial or congressional investigation. Any conspiracy would have been strictly off the books, meaning that there would be comparatively little that would need to be covered up. The conspirators, if any, may very well have counted on the automatic implementation of a thoroughgoing damage control operation in the event of such a catastrophic breach of security protocols. And it is within this shadow of space of tradecraft we can postulate any given number of scenarios, including the extraordinarily simple. Phillips, having previously secured the deep background of Oswald as pro-Castroite, contacts D. Morenschild to instruct Oswald to shoot the president. which the Patsy understood as one phase of a fake Cuban defection operation. 240, technically, it would not even have to be necessary to kill JFK. Any kind of homicidal attack by a Castro agent would have been sufficient to raise the false flag. Kennedy's throat wound, presumably Oswald's second shot, which, if not fatal, would have been permanently debilitating, rendering the iconic headshot, whether administered by Oswald, a second gunman, or a panicked Secret Service agent, superfluous. Let's see, which the Patsy understood as one phase of a fake Cuban operation, or if Oswald's Marxist credentials were genuine, as a heroic act on behalf of the Cuban people, one which provided him with the necessary credentials to seek asylum in Havana, at least in the considered opinion of de Mohrenschildt and or any other fake pro-Castroites Oswald may have been in contact with.
Why would this have gotten him into
What?
into Cuba? I don't see how this could have led to him getting into Cuba.
Yeah, I actually don't think that makes a whole lot of sense, because you would think that Cuba would not want the heat, and they certainly wouldn't. They certainly wouldn't be thankful enough, you know. They wouldn't be thankful enough to take that heat. They just say, yeah, whatever. You know,
we're not going to say anything about this publicly, and
yeah,
you know who you are.
Yeah, because I mean, and Castro's actual actions after the fact or pretty clearly demonstrate that he wanted nothing to do with it, right? In the end, we are back to the methodological centerpiece of understanding Dallas as spectacle, Occam's razor, and the implausible accumulation of improbabilities. In my opinion, the most intellectually honest way to confront the logical dilemma inescapably posed by the circumstantial evidence is to invoke the counterintuitive. Out of approximately 160 million U.S. citizens that are the exact odds that the man who shot the president is the same person who was either the actor in or the subject of the Byzantine intelligence operation in Mexico City 2 months prior to the execution. Ultimately, what matters most is the accumulative circumstantial evidence of Oswald as a low-level clandestine actor that, when taken in its entirety, works to drastically reduce the implausibility of Dealey Plaza as the spectacle of the false flag. Both the beginning and the end of Oswald lie within the nomadic spaces he inhabited and the thresholds that he traversed. Liminality.
Liminality, bro.
So, yeah, I mean, this is a fair point here. Like, accepting the Warren Commission explanation that Oswald acted entirely alone, given his labyrinthine connections and bizarre background, his resume, you might say.
Yeah.
It seems really fucking unlikely, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So, yeah. So, you don't have to actually explain precisely what even occurred if your goal is to just say, well, yeah, I mean, the Warren Commission was obviously an op, and because the assassination was also obviously an op.
I mean, the Warren Commission in particular is just so obviously controlled. I mean, it's like you would be
Gerald Ford, allegedly the guy who came up with the magic bullet.
Right,
Not the smartest person to have ever sat in the Oval Office.
Right, exactly. But it's like one of these things where it's like, I mean, like the Warren Commission, because there has to be the thing about the J, because it was so obvious, like nobody. It's really interesting historically because it's the first, like nobody at the time questioned Pearl Harbor, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
But the JFK assassination immediately produced spiraling, tangible. I mean, it's like the most. Boomers still talk about it. We're talking about it right now.
We're talking about it right now.
Yeah.
Yes. Spiritual boomers that we are.
Right.
Well, all right. I guess we're pretty much at time, and we're at the beginning of another section. So I think this is probably a good place to call it for the evening. Are you gonna look up Eunice Odio? You gonna read her her epic works and think about what your life would have been like if you could have met her in 1962.
Dude, this is like the spectacle of Dallas is the world I go to sleep in, is the world I get to dream about every night. Like it's almost impossible to imagine like a world. Like if I was the main character in a story, I would choose Lee Harvey Oswald is the coolest. Would be like an RPG as Lee Harvey Oswald would be one of the coolest video games ever.
Oh, it's just like Uncharted. It's just like if it's fail son Indiana Jones. That's like yeah. But all right, guys. Well, we're gonna call it there. We'll see you next time. And yeah, stay safe. Don't participate in any penetration operations.
You're discouraged from questioning and thinking critically. You must accept the word of the leaders. They make you feel guilty if you do question or argue. Your environment is often controlled, cutting you off from friends, family, school, previously held beliefs. They want you to become dependent, provide a poor diet, poor health care, little sleep, and long exhausting hours of work to make you physically weak and lower your ability to think clearly. Subtly, your self-confidence gets undermined, and your self-image or sense of identity is changed. The leaders control channels of communication. They cut off or put down outside sources of information. Then they bombard you with what they want you to think. They use strong peer pressure, playing on your desire to be loved and accepted. The leaders may promise rewards if you obey them and punishment if you don't, but they alternate harshness and leniency in order to confuse you. The leaders manipulate language, giving special meanings to words that only insiders understand. This is to make you feel like you're part of a special, important, or elite group, and that outsiders are inferior, dangerous, or doomed. You have to confess your shortcomings, mistakes, or misbehavior, sometimes even if these things never really happened. And meanwhile, your time and activities are tightly controlled. You don't have much privacy or energy or time to think because you're too busy doing monotonous, repetitive tasks. The leaders try to control you and even your sexuality, everything about you. They want to exploit you for their own enrichment, their own power or grandiosity. If they succeed, you will declare your loyalty unto its leaders, rejecting your old values and way of life. Without realizing it, you will have been changed into a person who is being controlled by a totalist cult.